Welcome, everybody, to the Plat Chat Valorant podcast, the audio and video experience. I'm doing the intro.
Doing the intro again. I had to make the same joke. Oh, it's like we're on a theme park ride intro. That's what it is. Hey, that's the joke I made.
Yeah, we're just in the actual multiverse split. There's been a Nexus event. We're in a branch reality because we accidentally streamed the first intro, but it didn't go live. But now we're recording it, and now we're actually here. And then I said I did something. I said have you guys heard, I don't know, something about YouTube, and then Josh said oh, mate, I've been answering questions like that all week. People in my family keep asking me about YouTube. So that's where we left off.
I'm not speaking. I haven't said a word on the podcast. You're saying words that I said.
No, and the unreleased footage and the lost episode.
Yeah, in the SpongeBob lost episode. That's what you said.
Hey, have you guys seen The Matrix?
No.
Have you seen the new one, Balla?
I think that's what he's asking for. I think he's asking about the new one, not the one from 20 years ago, not the one from decades ago.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a fairly valid question if you ask people who are young enough. If you ask Zoo, my little brother's never seen the Matrix movies. I keep listing off movies because I'm home for Christmas. Yeah, exactly. He wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. He'd be like, the metaverse, what? You mean Facebook and stuff? He wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Have you been getting into those situations where you're trying to explain to grandparents what you do for a living, how you make your money? Why?
My grandparents don't ask me anymore.
Why is Josh so successful? What does he do? He talks online. Yeah. What is that?
They've never. No one's ever framed the question. Josh is so successful. What does he do? That prefix has never been added to the beginning of that question before. Now they used to tell people that I was into gaming, and they were so old that gaming to them means professional gambling, right, like poker and stuff. And so they thought that I don't know, did slot machines for a living or something, and just made money doing that, I guess.
Pretty good. What you guys have a good holiday? You do something good, Connor? Anything fun? Anything exciting?
I posted my saga of the specific camera angle was to not have the clothes in the background, but now the clothes on the bed are in the background.
Dude, this guy's a disheveled mess.
But so the specific saga I had was I arrived into Kona Land, into Arkansas is where my grandparents live, and upon arrival, we received a call that they have had a COVID exposure because they went to the Cracker Barrel. They told us this, and I was like, we'd already gone in the car with my grandfather, and then my grandmother calls and is like, "Oh, we had lunch with my sister, and she tested positive, and we're all feeling kind of sick earlier this week because we went to the Cracker Barrel for meatloaf." And I'm like, God damn it! We're already in the car too. We got all this way, so I'm like, well, fuck. Now it's a COVID Christmas. Luckily, we brought tests with us, and everyone tested negative multiple times, so it's okay. It seems, or I've just unknowingly infected everyone. So I don't know. Either way.
That's good.
My sister's been out of the house for a couple of days and just tested positive, and we told her she can't come back. So she's just homeless at the moment.
Forever.
Just left her in the streets. What about you, Balla? This was the first Balla TW family Christmas, huh?
Yeah, so I don't have any funny stories. It was just cute as
just
fuck.
Cute and wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got plenty of videos of the baby trying to rip open presents. It's just too precious. Too precious. No funny story.
No, that's a good story though. That's adorable. That's cute. I didn't really do anything crazy. We didn't really do anything, did we? Huh?
I mean,
I asked you guys, and you said you weren't doing shit when I was last there.
We just vibed.
We went to we hung out with Bren's family. Remember that? That wasn't on Christmas Day, but that was Christmas
Eve.
Yeah.
Would you guys play bridge?
No.
We did everything.
I mean, you could pull up one of those videos if you want, Kurt, that you tweeted. Or
Britain's family doesn't seem like a bridge family. They're
definitely not a bridge.
They go back
family.
and they're just pounding down brews type of family.
Yeah, it's definitely more of that. It was a good time. It was very fun, very fun. Kurt, if you want to pull that video up in the meantime, I've got responsibilities to take care of on this podcast.
Oh.
Because this episode has a sponsor, and they're called Manscaped.
I don't love that.
What? Oh, dude, here come the nuts. Here comes Josh with the glowing sweater.
There he goes.
Holy sh! That's great. I mean, that is a great sweater. That is just outlandish.
Engagement way up.
This is the engagement's through the roof now.
I mean, the bits he won't stop.
He won't stop dancing.
But of course, you can save 20% with code VALOCHAT20 at manscaped.com. Hey, fellas. This episode of Insert Show Name, that's Plat Chat Valorant. That's where Plat Chat Valorant goes. Is brought to you by our favorite producers of Ball Trimmers, Manscaped trademark. The global leaders in below-the-waist grooming are leaving 2021 with new product. Clean yourself into the new year with their ultra-premium body wash. Also, special offer alert. That would be a good time for you to start dancing around, Josh. Let me say it again. Let me say it again.
He's so tired out.
Also, special offer alert? What?
There we go. Oh, the offer's crazy. It's out of control.
It's a sale.
Use the code VALOCHAT20 for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Oh, God. 4 million men already trust Manscaped. Time to join them. Josh, you're a little tired out right there.
Oh, yeah, I'm a little tired after that, honestly. I've got to be honest. Yeah.
Yep. So, again, that's 20% off. Code VALOCHAT20 at manscaped.com. And you get free shipping with that. And also, they want us to say Happy New Year to your balls. So, Happy New Year to your balls. Now, all jokes and gags aside.
You know what I love?
What?
Sorry, go on. No, go on.
No, the products are actually great. That is the only trimmer shaver. I love the ball deodorant. Ever since they sent us that little care package when they first sponsored us, I've been getting maximum usage out of it. It is an excellent product. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Preach.
Kurt, did you want to play a video of Bren's family?
I think Bren deleted that video for obvious reasons.
Yeah, a couple bevies in when that little video got posted. So if you saw it, that's a rare artifact.
I did.
All
I've
right.
never seen it.
Well, funny time's done. It's time to talk about Valorant. It's time for that serious analysis that you come here for. We've got a new agent teaser. Holy shit, there's a screenshot of a shoe. Kurt, pull it up. There it is. It's the next agent teaser. Kicking off next year is I was going to read the text, but now I can't.
I have a theory.
Kicking off next year is an agent who can outpace the rest of the roster, shocking the competition and sliding straight into the fight. Josh, what's your theory?
Okay. Let's take a closer look into that wording, right? Outpace the rest of the competition. We're talking mobility, probably. Shocking. Lightning, some kind of shocking, electricity component, sliding, maybe some movement. I know something that fits perfectly here. I'm thinking Arcane. You know the way that Arcane worked, the way that they kind of used the link with Fortnite, and they had like their character into Fortnite, and that was like cross promotion that was being used to elevate their own show. I think the Valorant people have seen that, and they've looked at the release date of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which comes out April 1st, 2022. And they've said, get that shit into the game right now. It's gonna bang. And then the next one is Dr. Robotnik, and that's when I appear.
So, so you think is Jim Carrey still in Sonic? Is he going to be in Valorant as well?
Oh, he's Dr. Eggman.
He's coming back, yeah.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, I could see where you're trying to I can see where you're trying to take us with that. At least you didn't bring up adding the gulag. I mean, that
Gulag's played out at this point.
Yeah, I mean that is played out, but some will never cease. the hopes and desires to have it become reality. I mean, yeah, it does.
I think Bren's knocking at our door right now. If you want to get the door.
Wait, you want me to get the door?
No,
don't tell me this is actually he's heard the gulag talk from here.
Yeah.
And he's here to talk about it.
All right, Wyatt's opening the door. There's no one there. I was making a joke as Bren does the gulag joke.
Wyatt actually just got punked out. Wyatt, you just got punked out.
Guys, Bren's here.
Don't you look like a fool? Don't you look like a fool right now?
Brent has to come over. They're doing the other podcast. It all lined up. Does seem though like here's my real take. You guys want my real opinion?
Swirls of water.
This is champagne, actually.
Oh wow!
No, it isn't. It's water. The real opinion is it's going to be a mobility duelist, and the shocking part is that they're going to be able to destroy set utility with some sort of radius shock EMP shock dart Sova-esque thing. So when you're playing your little Killjoy, all your little alarm bots get blown up. That's my theory. Take it or leave it.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Do you think they'll be able to run at like knife pace or faster all the time? Or everything that they've talked about so far in terms of the teaser has been about moving quicker. The voice line says, I run quickly or I move fast or something like that. And then they've got sneakers and talking about
the voice line does not say, I run quickly. It can't be the voice
something
line.
like that. It's like
quickly.
It's like, I go fast or something like that.
I mean, that would be a Sonic the Hedgehog voice line if he were to be into the game. So that would check out. If it's a character,
Capture the Chaos Emerald. I think that's the other voice line that got leaked.
I really think it would be cool if it was just straight up about movement speed, though, because like think about the ridiculous, like just imagine like off the rip you buy like the hyper boost or something, and you're just run really fast. And like imagine like just in ranked or some shit, someone buys the hyper boost and they run it down mid as fast as possible, and they're just like there as the doors go down, as the walls goes down. That would be fucking crazy, right? That would be an insane character if that was, or agent, I should say, if that was the case.
Yeah,
it'd be weird.
It would be
really weird, but I think it'd be cool because it would change the timings of the game a lot. Right? It would change the timings of the game significantly if you have a character that doesn't exist within the modern
We don't need any more characters that change the timing of the game.
It's too late.
So fucking many.
But
It's
it'd be
too
cool,
late.
though.
The timing of the game has already been broken. It will stay broken and continue to just break off in various directions. Honestly, this new agent, I'm going to call it now. It's the new Jett. I don't know anything about it. New Jett, though. This agent is going to... mobility is too strong. Mobility is simply too powerful. And
it's a Soldier 76. Its only ability is to run quick, and it's just going to be shite.
If he gets by KO, he can't run. If he gets the KO EMP, he can't run. His legs stop working.
All right. With a new agent coming in, though, and Chamber has been out for a little bit. I mean, there's new agents coming out constantly. That's what Valorant is. That's what it's going to be. And I like it. It keeps it interesting. It keeps it fun. The meta shifts very frequently because of it, though. So we're going to talk about the state of the agents a little bit. We're heading into the new year. People have been clamoring for a year outside of Riot headquarters for Jett nerfs. At the moment, I think even more so than Jett. My heat check. I've tapped into the streets, and the streets responded by saying, we hate Astra. I'm seeing an immense amount of Astra dislike being posted via, your favorite internet text forum or social media or blog. People are very mad at Astra at the moment. That's at least what I feel like I've been seeing. But heading into the new year, it seems like Astra and Jett are at the top of the nerf list.
Please, Jett.
Yeah, I mean... At this point, guys, we know there's a big patch coming, which is what Kurt's showing right now. There's going to be a big early 2022 patch, changing a lot of agents. Surely, Jett and Astra get nerfed, right? Right, guys?
No.
Surely.
Right, Josh?
Surely.
No. People have been saying that for ages. They are not going to nerf Jett. They're going to nerf her by making her smokes cost 50 credits extra or something like that. That they don't seem to be willing so far to take an agent that's amazing and make them significantly worse. I think what would you say the largest nerf has been to an agent so far in terms of
Raze, maybe,
trying to
or Sage? Sage has got nerfed a lot.
But Sage was also incremental. Sage wasn't like one day they just decided to whack her on the head, which is what I think you need to do to Jett. She's had incremental changes and she's still the most picked agent in the game. At this point, you need to just whack her on the head and be like, okay, even if we kill this agent for a while, she's dominated the meta for the last year. Like, we can live without her for a little while we figure out how to reintroduce her. She's not going to disappear forever. But like, I'm thinking
Omen.
It's either Omen, you think?
Yeah, I think it has to be Omen. I think it's like in hindsight, it's not the paranoia change, which I mean that was pretty impactful, but not the price change. It's more the big one, 3.0, I think it was, where they changed all the economy with like default abilities. That fucked Omen so hard more than anybody else, I think.
I think Killjoy's change was pretty significant to her.
I think it, it's weird because I think that's a, I think it was, but she still sees so much play. She's still
range?
Good enough.
Yeah, when they changed the range for a lot of her util, I feel like that was like a pretty fundamental change to her kit that essentially took her from being like, oh, you can play her all the time, to you have to be kind of like, okay, what maps? What is our stretch exactly? Like, it's not a universal agent anymore.
I think the most comparable when you're thinking about Jett are Raze and Sage. Raze and Sage were both played all the time at the beginning of the game, and Raze was way overpowered and got knocked down pretty significantly, reduced damage on blast packs to almost nothing, deleted one of her nades, and Sage just over time just got whacked repeatedly.
Yeah.
Jett needs something like that, I think, and even if it makes her underpowered, I don't think that that's a bad thing. We've seen Jets dominate the game, playing their own game at times. It just feels like they're playing their own little mini game. It would be good for the game to have a period of time where she isn't a permapick agent. And she always can be in the future. Like, you're not saying that Jet's always going to be like a bad pick, but just knock her until she becomes like a 50% pick or worse, and reintroduce her afterwards by either reverting some of the nerfs or tweaking it slightly. But I'd really like to see what the game looks like without Jett.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting, though, once we actually start seeing Chamber more frequently. I think we've seen him 2 tournaments now, at least in NA, that I've been paying attention to. That hasn't had that significant of an impact against Jett, but still. I do feel like any of the Omen change, for example, didn't really matter as much because Astra was already in the game at that point. But if they had come back then, I think it would have put him on par with Brent in terms of pick rate. That's, I agree, needed for Jett. But I don't think that's the only thing needed. I actually do vibe a lot with the people who are hating on Astra right now, because she's just so prolific and annoying and changes the timing of the game, like we mentioned before, in such a way that it's hard to play around, honestly, and it slows the game down for a viewer that I don't like at all.
Yeah, I mean, she is outlandishly powerful to the point where the other smokers, like, playing them is just, you have to play them in such niche scenarios with a niche approach to individual maps to get value out of them. I mean, yeah, she's just far too dominant to the point where it's not interesting anymore. Similar to Jett, where it's just, you see it so much, it's kind of lost its luster a bit. Yeah, I really would like to see an Astra nerf. I'd like to see a Jett nerf. Are there any other agents that we feel like we need nerfs right now?
Viper still.
Yeah, I would like to see a bit of a change with Viper's Pit. I think that's maybe the only thing with her kit. Maybe something.
I mean, I always want to touch Sova. That guy's fucking broken.
Sure.
I hate him so much.
Yeah.
I'd just like to see them focus on introducing the new agents well, though. I think the game in itself is reasonably balanced outside of a couple of outliers, and it's just about making sure that you actually find niches for the new agents that you're introducing, rather than leaving them to die like Yoru. I know that they are redoing Yoru's kit, but he was... I mean, this is like almost you're adding 2 agents at once, because Yoru was just unusable. His pick rate was sat at like absolutely 0 in terms of pro play, essentially. And so when he gets redone, it's like 2 new agents coming into the game. So if you don't solve things, or at least get things reasonably good when you first introduce an agent, it just compounds issues down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The one thing that did come out of the State of the Agents actual blog post was that they mentioned doing a lot more balancing changes, at least in early 2022. Yeah, this paragraph right here, where they said they had stopped. I don't know, they didn't mention like VCT, but that was pretty evident that they didn't want to like change too much around champs. And now they're going to go back to the cadence that they had earlier, which is a lot more balancing changes. So we could see, for example, like a Phoenix get buffed just like randomly throughout these patches in the early year.
That would be nice. I would like to see Phoenix come back.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I would really like a Phoenix buff specifically, because Phoenix has been just, it feels like almost Yoru tier at times. And like when you look at pro play in particular, like even all the maps were like, oh, Phoenix is still pretty decent, like Haven. Like when it comes out, you're just like, this is pain. When you watch the Phoenix like actually playing and like trying to get value out of the util a lot of times, comparatively just picking another duelist.
It's interesting as well, because Phoenix's ult is so good. It's still so strong, but yet he's just not viable based on everything else around the 6 orb, very powerful ult that he has. He still remains unviable, which I think might leave a potential for difficulty in balance, because that might mean that he's on the knife's edge, where he might just be one small push might make him too good because of how strong his ult already is and how inexpensive it is. You know what I mean? So I think it's possible that if they buff Phoenix, he might just be instantly, or maybe not instantly, but people will come to realize that there's a ton of value in picking him if the rest of his kit gets buffed, and then you have the really powerful 6 orb ultimate, excuse me.
That's why you need to tweak him by adding skill shots to his molly, so that if you land it on a player, they are incinerated and just immediately crumble.
Wait, does that have to be a direct hit, or can it bounce and then fall onto them?
It can fall onto them, but that still counts as a direct hit because it landed on them, on their head.
I see.
But the actual impact of the molly must land on the player.
So you're saying if they had a perfect lineup, they could theoretically insta-kill someone if they were going for a defuse?
Well, you know, when you diffuse, you could be on either side of the spike. It'll be a very complex
But if it were to hit them
lineup.
on many common like diffuse spots,
I think this is good.
Yes, absolutely.
Like you just counter the idea of body blocking a molly, like 'cause that's so prominent these days.
Yeah, it's so smart. You just the one person goes up and catches the molly and dies.
Also, it should melt sage walls as well.
So.
Yeah, you should just be able to throw it at a sage wall and it just melts the entire wall. The walls
that would be cool.
They should revamp the ability. It should just make your hands burn and you could just touch somebody and they just die.
That's so smart. That's
just
so
run
smart.
around with a melee. That would be sick. Okay.
Turn it into Halo.
We're going to move on. We got, of course, as there will be for many weeks to come until the tournament circuit starts, we've got roster moves. Rosters are moving all over the place in all regions. You got regions trying to, you know, like in Korea, there are teams trying to be formed to compete with Vision Strikers. In other regions, Brazil, they are kind of trying to come together, make some super team-like creations, bunch of new orgs coming in, a lot going on. And in the NA scene, there's this dynamic at the moment, which we talked about a bit on the previous episode, where teams are looking for new players. There's a lot of great NA Tier 2 talent, but a lot of them are on Tier 2 org rosters where they have crazy buyouts. One of those orgs that reportedly had huge buyouts was Soar. Soar had 2 players on it that I think were of real note. Cryocells, who is their Jett that's reported to go to Exet, and who we're going to talk about right now, Zander, who was Smoke's player on that team, going to be joining version 1 after they decided to part ways with Odorous after playing with him for a short while, and they decided to drop the bag to pick up Zander with that giant head in that image, just that oversized photoshopped head in that image. I mean, I saw a lot of people making jokes about these Photoshop images because they are just hilarious. That might be, I'm going to say, that Photoshopped player announcement image of Big Head Zander, that's a top 2 Photoshop player announcement for me. Number 1, though, is still Raucus in a suit. That Raucus one is hilarious because the fact that they were like, well, he's a coach, so let's get him in the Sentinels jersey, but put a blazer on it is fucking hilarious. So can you pull that up, Kurt? What?
Was that photoshopped?
Yes.
Because he came out in Champions wearing a suit.
Yeah, then they were like, put him in the outfit that he wore that we may put him in the thing.
I don't know, man.
Dude,
I don't think that's Photoshop.
That absolutely is Photoshop. That is the
Well,
top.
also, what's so funny about this? I don't really get it. Like, I'm not understanding what's Xander with a big fucking head like that, like the Turok like 20% head. That's funny, but this is just a very average Photoshop.
I find it very funny that they signed him as a coach. They're like, oh, how do we show that he's a coach? So they photoshopped him in a suit with the Sentinels jersey. I think that's funny. I like it. Those are top two Photoshop player announcements in my book. Listen, Avast,
I think the Xander one blows it out
if you
of
don't
the
think it's
water.
funny, come with your own Photoshop funny player announcements. All right.
I mean, I
talking
think
a lot of shit for someone who did. Where are your assets?
Look at any of the ones from Overwatch League this year when they couldn't have access to players, like especially the orgs that weren't willing to pay any money and just got someone in MS Paint to like use the eraser function to get rid of people.
My original player announcement for like LG back in like 2017 when they put like me and Super and Jake and they like photoshopped us all into our fucking
LG
jerseys.
Evil with Avast
really
and Jake.
Bad. Plus, that photo of me is also. I took essentially every photo between 2017 and 2018 of me was like a mirror shatteringly.
Can you
bad.
send that to me,
I
Josh?
think every actual photo of me between those 2 years was so fucking awful.
I'm trying to find it. What I have found though is just one of Jake, and it's the funniest thing. It's I'm putting it in the Valorant chat.
Okay.
This one is just incredible. I mean, for all of the Valorant viewers, they won't really know who Jake is, perhaps, but it like a Overwatch player turned caster turned back into player coach and played on a team with Avast in this team. And this, I mean, that is good, man. That is good.
That is so good. Can you find if you can find the one of Avast? That would be
I can find
excellent content. Thank you, Connor. I appreciate your commitment to the laughs.
I'll work in the background.
Okay, yeah, you guys cook stuff up in the background.
Yeah, I found the original announce of us that had all of us. I found the original announce, and it's just so terrible looking. This announcement, like this is what I talk about when you think about like really bad announcements. Like Xander's is pretty bad because they made him look like a minnow from SpongeBob. But this one,
wow,
this one's really bad too because they're all poorly photoshopped into the jerseys in these player portraits. Like it's just disgustingly bad.
Why do you look like player
to the
like
right?
Character agent like?
It's just how they wanted to do it. You know?
Where did I mean? I wouldn't even know that was you. Can we just?
I know.
That doesn't even look like you. What did you? Were you addicted to meth at the time?
Dude, all of my photos between the year 2017 to like 2019, it looked like I had come out of like it just looked awful. All my photos were mirror shatteringly bad. They were so fucking disgusting. All of them. Literally all of them were so bad. I had to go through a deep personal transformation. Of extremely intense transformation.
Yep.
I entered the chrysalis.
Huge, an immense glow up since the LG Evil days. In the Boston Uprising days.
That was the average, like that was like the average how bad the Overwatch League photos were. So like I don't even think the Raucous one was that bad. Okay, we spent way too much fucking time on this topic. We need to move on.
Okay. We're gonna talk about the player. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the roster.
Right, yeah.
Or I guess maybe a better way to talk about it is, how do we feel about V1? I guess just generally moving into 2022. Now that they've got this roster, we know that Xander's in. They made it clear that he's also coming in to be the IGL. How are we feeling about the roster? Who wants to?
I think Xander's a great pickup. I was watching him at Frag. He was playing in a pug with On the Way, and he was IGLing there too. But it's perfectly in the place that they need him in terms of the role. I don't think Odorous fit that well in terms of role. Xander does, and he's an up and coming IGL who I think is getting his shot in a team that he can actually bring somewhere. Doesn't necessarily think that their chances are that high, but I think Xander is a guy that can do something for them significant.
I think if they're able to crack into the top 10 race in North America, looking at the teams for next year, then it'll have been an incredible pickup. Considering you said that Zander's going to be IGLing for them as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with that level of responsibility on the guy's shoulders, if he is able to turn the team into what it was like under Vanity, that's a major turnaround. Their most recent results have been, like middling. Like they're not that exciting a prospect actually heading into 2022, even though they've got players that we've seen at Reykjavik and they have name value and people, like following them and stuff like that. They're really not that exciting of a prospect. They've just been easily beating a lot of the tier 2 teams, but unable to crack into the upper level. If Zander's able to take them to that next step, that's enormous from him. But I don't think it's to be expected.
No. Yeah, that's the one thing. Like, I haven't watched enough of Soar to like know how his IGLing is, but I do know he's hyped from it. And what I saw from Frag, which is obviously a shit ton of pugging, and that's just how NA kind of calls in general. It seems pretty good. Like, it seems like he has the chops to be able to turn into something really good.
Yeah, I like this move. I think Zander's the real deal. I think it's a really good pickup. It's one of those situations like I was saying at the beginning, where you have all the NA teams going for EU players, and good prospects like him and others in Tier 2 NA that could have gotten passed on just because of the price tag. But
I want to know what the price tag is or was. That's what I would like to know. Like, in terms of
Kurt, you could try and find the reporting, because I don't want to talk out of my ass. But I thought I
was
could
it reported
just.
on?
I get warning. I might be making shit up. Warning. But I'm pretty sure I saw I swear I saw an article that reported that his buyout was 200,000. But Zander,
that was?
I could be warning, that could be not true. I don't know. I might have been dreaming and scrolling Twitter in my dreams. I don't know. I swear I saw that somewhere.
I think you're probably talking about, there was a thread on Reddit, and some people had hypothesized that like the Cryos buyout was like 200K. I don't think, but then they were also talking about the Soar for like, that was also for a Soar player, but I don't know about Zander specifically. I don't
cursory listen. That's just that may be complete hearsay nonsense. I am aware that it's very high. It might not be that high. I don't know for sure. That's just I'm pretty sure I saw that reported somewhere, but could be just complete nonsense.
I actually don't think that's unreasonable based off what I've heard about other buyouts. But I would like to have actual reporting done on these kind of things, because I think, especially with what a hot button topic it is and how important it is for the development of the North American scene, this is the kind of stuff that is actually really interesting to know about, the financial dynamics behind why certain players might not be elevated to the tier 1 level, or like the level of investment and therefore faith that they have in Zander. I think is really important insight to have upon a move like this.
Yeah. But
why don't they report on it though? Like, because I've heard specifically numbers on buyouts just behind the scenes that are very easy to capture. Like, people that I don't expect to know, and it's just weird.
It could just be a lack of interest from certain, like maybe certain, if they're not, it's not necessarily like a huge story to go and pursue at times compared to other things. Like, I don't know what's necessarily, since I'm not behind the analytics of like the journalists that are currently following this, like I'm assuming they have their own topics that they pursue, or like maybe it was simply they just couldn't find the info, but it seems unlikely.
Well,
so
it might be very difficult to confirm as well without being able to see the contract. People don't want to show you their entire contract, so maybe it's just hard to find a primary source for it.
Yeah. I think it's like a pretty small money move comparatively to like the TenZ buyout situation, right? Where like there's going to be so many people wanting to know about that. But like if you're like, oh, I need to go head to the fucking do a Freedom of Information Act to the Library of Congress to figure out Zander's buyout, like obviously it's going to be probably a less, they're going to get less reward out of that by investing that many resources.
Sure. Overall, though, I like this move. Glad V1 did it. I think that's a good piece that they could keep and maybe build around in the future if he continues to play well, lead to the team well. And V1 are one of the teams I'm interested to see as we move forward. If there is a bit of a meta shift, and if the agent balance is significant, like if Jett falls out of the meta, we've really only seen Penny play like Jett and Raze a bit. Like there are individuals like that I'm interested in seeing where they go and what other agents they'll play, how they'll work around future changes. But good move. I like it. Next up, Korea. Last we saw of anyone from the region playing was Vision Strikers at Champions, and I think for some they probably underwhelmed. I think for most of us, we would probably say they underwhelmed a bit. And I think that overall the sentiment around the Korean scene has changed significantly this year. I feel like coming into it, there was, from a lot of the hardcore fans of that region, there was a lot of hype. New Turn really, I think they surprised a lot of people at Iceland at the beginning of the year, making such a deep run. And then, they kind of fell off, and then Vision Strikers formed the super team for just before Berlin. Had a pretty good showing there, going out in the quarterfinals to Gambit in a close series, the eventual winners. And then at Champions, not as good a performance from Vision Strikers, and I feel like the Korean scene is kind of it's fallen out of the conversation a little bit. So there are some new teams being formed to try and, I suppose, contend with Vision Strikers, but also really at this point just make a claim on the world stage, because Korea has failed to send a representative to do that in the last couple events. I think New Turn was actually the best showing, surprisingly.
Yeah, weirdly enough. And I'm somewhat interested in this esports connected lineup. It was more of a rumor than a report, actually, a while back, although it was from somebody that does a lot of reporting. I think it was from Coco, who writes for VLR, where he was talking about more organizations coming into Korea for 2022. Now, I don't really know the financial dynamics of that, because as far as I was aware, they were financially incentivizing organizations to get involved in 2021 VCT, and yet a lot of Korean organizations didn't. And it's not like the viewership's been blowing up or the teams have been doing particularly well, but for whatever reason that nobody's been particularly able to hammer down, as far as I've seen, a lot of Korean organizations are apparently looking to invest for next year. Maybe it's just the overall viewership. But this is one of the new orgs. I've never heard of them before. Esports Connected, with a capital E, a capital S. I mean, literally never seen anyone.
They have 1,700 followers. I'm pretty sure they're brand new, spanking new organization. Yeah. So this is one of the kind of new wave, I guess, of orgs trying to get in. Perhaps some of our new viewers know more about the org or parent company or something like that. I haven't really dug into it, but they have a pretty decent lineup. I mean, in terms of supportive players, I'm excited about this team. They've got King from Vision Strikers. That's a big move, taking what's clearly the best anchor player, sentinel player kind of role in the region. And then they've got Zander as well, who was at some point during the year, I think, had an argument for being one of the best or at least most creative Astras with how they were using their utility to be able to both help their teammates and set up really cool creative plays themselves. So you add those two pieces together, and then the fact that Bazzi's been doing pretty well over on Crazy Raccoon and is now coming back to playing Korea, you've got yourself a decent team. And Muthi and Goddead have both been all right on previous, like nearly up at the top teams before. Seems like the supportive pieces, though, are the most exciting thing about this roster.
Also, that Perry is coach, which I think is cool. Getting Perry as a coach is cool after their player experience. But I mean, it just is another roster that there's hoping, because I feel like Korea, they've had some decent showings, but they're about to enter, when I throw out a reactionary Randy take, and everyone's gonna be like, oh, he's so right, and then other people are like, oh, he's so stupid, like, oh, they're about to enter that Brazil territory. I'm like, I don't want to hear about them again, until they do stuff. But at the same time, they have had some okay international success. I would say far more than Brazil on the international stage when you consider Iceland. And some of the showings against very good teams, even at champs and such, right? So I do think, even if they haven't necessarily won. So I do think this is cool for the region. And I'm big on King. I think King is, we can all agree, is like a very, very good piece for any team.
Is there any information about who's going to lead the team? Because I think all the teams, or all the players are good. Goddead took he retired from pro play, though, was what from F4Q back then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's surprising to see him come back. I'm curious who's going to lead this team. I really hope that it's King, because I see stuff from this guy in terms of decision making, where when he's not on a leash, when he's not stuck to a specific setup, that is just really, really good. And I hope that he can maybe start to mold that into a place where he can be leading, because I think that's kind of what Korea is lacking a little bit, is good mid-round decision making outside of vision strikers. And you can make an argument for like Reykjavik new turn with solo, but other than that, leadership and mid-round decision making is something that they lack a lot of, that I think King is specifically good at. So if he's leading, I might have more faith, not faith, but more like stocks for this team, because that could be really cool.
And I think your point there is really important, Balla, too, is that I think the breakthrough for Korea is not going to come from any super team that gets formed. You've already had a super team formed in Korea. You got the best players that could possibly be in your roster with Vision Strikers this year, but they still weren't able to really crack into top territory when it came to international tournaments. So to me, it's about rehauling the way that the region is thinking about the game a bit. Maybe not a full rehaul, because they do some things really, really well, but trying to incorporate more stuff that the other regions are thinking about and adjusting their game plan, how they call, how they think about the mid-rounding and the information game, that kind of stuff. And I think they've been slow on the uptake generally throughout the year, probably because they don't really have that much match experience. We've been talking about it. I've been hammering it to death every single time. But like, Vision Strikers can't learn if they only play 5 games in 6 months against top competition, or 6 games in 6 months. You know, like, you can't learn from 1 match a month against a team that actually pushes you at all. So I think the combination of getting tons of good match experience against rivals that actually push you, and then incorporating stuff that you really learn from international tournaments, and getting your coaches like Solo and Perry to push the region forwards. That, to me, is where Korea can break through its current ceiling. It's not really in the player quality. So I'm fine with this team, even though I don't think it is a super team. I think it's probably going to be, like, from what we see, 3rd best in Korea behind Damwon and Vision Strikers. But the path to winning in Korea is wide open right now, because it's not about player quality. It's about finding that edge in the way you think about the game.
Yeah, well said. And then, so that does also, it leaves Vision Strikers in an interesting spot where presumably now they just have Lakia starting. I would assume, right? Long awaited Lakia in the starting roster, but I suppose we'll have to wait for some sort of official announcement on that. At this point, that's just speculative. But another team in Korea that didn't have a great year, but they hung around at the top pretty much all year. Failed in the last chance qualifier. Damwon Gaming. They were the best performing Korean team in the last chance qualifier, though, if I remember correctly. I think they made it the deepest, which was
third place.
Yeah, a little surprising. They couldn't make it the whole way. And now they're revamping. They've got Esperanza over from F4Q, I think one of the more impressive players on that roster when we saw them at Berlin. And they picked up hyeoni, who we've talked about a whole bunch on this show, upcoming player in the region, played on New Turn, only in that one LCQ event, and New Turn looked to be a mess. And, did they get enough value out of hyeoni? Did they put him in positions to succeed? Did they hold him back? Was he on too much of a leash? We kind of talked about how they were maybe treating him a bit like a rookie, and I believe that was the point that Ball made, and I think that there's definitely some truth in that, how they were using him on that roster for LCQ. So I think he still has a lot to show and something to prove. And they also bring in Solo from New Turn, but to be a coach. And Damwon now find themselves in the 6-man roster situation. Will it end up being a 6-man roster? I don't know. I would hope not at this point. This is just a side note, but what is the best result of a 6-man roster this year?
Heretics.
Yeah.
Heretics. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Other than Heretics, though,
they fucking won. Like,
I'm just trying to think. At Champions, any 6-man rosters do decent? Vision Strikers.
They did
were they the
okay,
best?
But they
were
weren't.
Vision Strikers the best?
There aren't really that many 6-man rosters. It's not a huge sample size, but it doesn't seem to be. It's almost like roster size is negatively correlated with success because of Crazy Raccoon and Zander Division as well. Yeah. So they've just kind of tanked it, honestly.
Yeah, they really have, haven't they?
Also, early C9 when they had Penny as a 6-man too.
Penny?
Wait.
Do you mean
What do you mean?
Wasn't it Penny?
Poise?
Or Poise.
Poise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think early C9
Yeah.
with Poise as well was a 6-man roster.
That was a mess.
Which was a fucking mess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I would hope this isn't a 6-man roster, but I do think that these are some cool pickups.
Okay, here's a question then. If it's not a 6-man roster, right? At the moment, they have two kind of players that have been supportive kind of flex roles with Eugene and Esperanza. And then they have two Jett stars with hyeoni and Texture. Obviously, we've seen hyeoni play flex for New Turn, but on a really tight leash and really supportively, and he looked really crap. So if you're in charge of this team, do you try and take Texture and hyeoni as your duelist duo and just make one of them into a good flex player? I say make as if it's easy. Or do you try and trade one of them to, I mean, let's say ESC, Esports Connected, because they need a star Jett player. They would love to have Texture or hyeoni, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And you try and take Eugene and Esperanza on your team. What direction would you rather see this team go in? Because I think most people are just assuming Eugene's gone because fans just assume more firepower better, so keep hyeoni and Texture. I don't know whether that's actually the better move.
Yeah, I think that would be dependent on how well Texture can play the flex roles, or if that was just hyeoni being in a poorly structured system when we saw him playing a lot of Sky and LCQ. I think that's pretty tough. I mean, I could say for a certainty that I would want Esperanza to start in this roster. I think he showcased that he's a really talented player at Berlin, and I would definitely like to see him in the starting roster. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. What do you think, Balla?
I think that I'd rather see hyeoni put into a position where he is the star player. As a young kid who has a lot to learn about the game for sure. I think a lot of the aspects of his game were overrated in that one game against New Turn. And that might be a reason why he was on such a leash in LCQ. But even still, I want him to be in the positions to carry, right? I want to build this guy up to have the confidence to go crazy, right? And not have to learn like all this extra it's not nuance. The nuance is stuff that he's learning, all the extra setups and stuff that you have to be doing as a support player. I want him to focus on one thing. It's similar to what I was saying with TenZ on Sentinels. I want him to be able to focus on one thing so he could shine at that while he learns, and this is not applicable to TenZ, but while he learns the rest of the game at a high level, you know? That's where I want it to be. So I want to see Esperanza go into Eugene's slot and Texture play a more supportive role.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do want to see hyeoni get a chance in that spot as well, because he definitely didn't in New Turn, and he didn't. I feel like he didn't get to. I don't know why. For me, when I was watching his games, he's at his best when he was able to play aggressively and play with the AWP. And when he was playing the supportive roles, you know, you're not getting value out of being an AWPer. So I'd like to see him get put in that position where they're putting the money in his hands, they're putting the AWP in his hands. Go on.
One other thing that they need to do is to not split the idea for him. Players need to be able to focus on something at least semi-short term, right? They can't go into a tournament playing two roles and learning both roles at the same time. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. But that about does it for the roster news of this week, at least. I'm sure there will be a lot more to come. But now we're going to move into the Plat Year Award nominations. The plan is the awards. So the plan is we're gonna go through our nominees for the official Plat Valorant 2021 Year Wrap Up 2021 awards, and then next week we're going to do a little winners announcement segment where we're gonna pick the winners. But today we're gonna go through all of the nominees. So first up, who's the player of the year? So there's a lot of good options. There's a lot of good options. Now, how do we want to do this? I could give a name and we could talk about them a little bit. I could just rifle off a bunch of names on a list.
I think you post up a name because we already to let the fans in on it. We already posted a pool, so let's go through what we agreed on as the pool of nominees.
I think that's very reasonable. Player of the year, number one. This is an easy one. This guy's Of course he's a nominee. Of course, it's Nats. I mean, he just has to be, right? Absolutely dominated at Berlin, brought Gambit the trophy, and then still played well at Champions. They made it to the finals. Gambit had an amazing year. The second half of their 2021 was phenomenal. And even early on, at the beginning of the year, when Gambit was not on people's radars, there was still an era where it was like, more of like the hardcore viewer would be like, oh, dude, but Nat's Cypher set up on Icebox, bro. Like, people would be talking about that because he was doing crazy stuff back then. He was a really impressive player from the top of the year, not just regionally in CIS, but like when during the Iceland qualifiers, he was performing really well. When there were a couple international tournaments, he was previous to that, like some of the independent ones, like I think there was the Red Bull Home Ground. He was impressive in that. He just had a great year overall. But what do you guys have to say, Josh? What do you make of Nats?
I think Nats is going to be the favorite for a lot of people. And I also want to point out that there is no obvious winner for this category, in my opinion. I think anyone who thinks there's an obvious winner is probably underselling their opponents or other nominees in this category. Because to me, there are pros and cons of pretty much anyone. This isn't a case where it's like a simple just dominated the year or something like that. That's not the case in this game, in my opinion. So the positives for Nats, you've already talked about a lot of them. So I want to talk about some like caveats for why he wouldn't just straight up win it, perhaps. And one of those would be the fact that a lot of his impact is isolated to that insane tournament in Berlin. He's not like, he wasn't the best player in Europe before Berlin. I think that would have to go to somebody like CNED. And then at Champions, he wasn't, I mean, he was arguably not the best player on his team. I think you'd have somebody like Chronicle probably as the Champions MVP from Gambit there. And then Ascend actually won the event as well. So I think it's, with the small amount of tournaments this year, it's pretty hard to say anybody definitively was, but he also reinvented the way that people play this role, which I think is a major plus that you didn't mention. Yeah. He wasn't just amazing in the way that a TenZ or a Ye, who we'll talk about later, I'm sure, they were amazing. They didn't reinvent how Jets played. They didn't. People were doing some of that stuff before. In 2020, people were trying to play how TenZ and Ye are playing this year. They just weren't as good at it. They didn't reinvent the way that people think about the role. Whereas I feel like Nats did that this year. People now think about the role differently.
Yeah, I think that's like the important part when thinking about how to differentiate you can't just look at stats. It's what specifically have they done, or like what is the cool aspect of them that makes them player of the year. And I think that whole meta defining aspect is the big benefit of Nats, in a way that honestly I can't think of a single player who has affected the meta on such a drastic scale to like trickle down to almost every single team. When
we were thinking of numbers too, like we would be like, I think before this we never really thought of like, okay, the Sentinel player, this player that's on Cypher or Viper or, Killjoy is like, they need to pop the fuck off. They need to get the frags. They're going to lose. But after Nats and Berlin is like, Nats has to drop 30 here. They're going to win, And like, it's like, it kind of redefined what we thought about players in that role on top of him redefining the meta aspects. Also, I think he raised the caliber of like, when you think about how the game evolves over time, you've seen this throughout a lot of games. There are certain roles, if you're in like a role-based game or a hero or an agent-based game, where starting off, you don't feel like they're necessarily impact frag roles. And I think Nats also pushed the envelope of like, what does it mean to be a Sentinel player too? And you've seen that with not just Nats though. He's not the only one to do it, but he's the most notable example of just like the actual ceiling of the players and what they can do on the field in terms of just pure fragging too on that role, pushing forward and forward and forward as the game went on, right? And I think that's similar to a lot of other games that have had like roles and categories where someone is just like, there's some roles that started out as kind of low impact frags or like low fragging roles, and then like the game just pushed and pushed and pushed. And Nats is definitely one of those players that's pushing the Sentinel role like forward in terms of like how much impact can you really have on the server.
All right. Next up, we all heckin' love him. It's TenZ. I mean, another name that just TenZ has to be on the list just because every single time we had any guess that player with a duelist, it would end up with Josh saying something like, his stats are unbelievable, but TenZ at Reykjavik was better, because his stats in Iceland were just, he just had the craziest tournament of the year. But Josh, give me more about TenZ.
Yeah, I mean, just to wax a little more lyrically about TenZ's stats for a moment, if you're going down the stats argument, and if you want like player that performed the peak of the year, if that was the way that you defined this category, player that had the highest peak throughout the entire year, then I think it would be a bit of a no-brainer that it was TenZ at Reykjavik, actually. There wasn't another player. There's Ye and Nats from Berlin, and then I don't think there really was a player that dominated champions to the same extent as those three did in their respective tournaments. And TenZ, to me, had the largest impact, not just stats-wise, but what he was able to do in terms of entry and multi-fragging for Sentinels at Reykjavik, and he was just a massive component of that. I think that being able to win a LAN tournament without dropping a map, probably never going to be repeated. And TenZ stats might remain the gold standard in terms of one tournament run for the foreseeable. Now, do I subscribe to the idea that it's about peak performance throughout the year? The like one peak of the year? Not really. I think you have to sustain it over a huge period of time. And so that's where the arguments about TenZ get much more complex.
Sure. Balla, do you want to talk about that a bit then? Like TenZ at the end of the year and, you know, the second half of the year, how would that affect his running here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably going to be the biggest detriment to him, was just straight up the way that he played in the tournaments at the beginning is always pretty good, and just pretty good was not what you were expecting out of 10. So he like set the ceiling so high for himself that every other like game that he's not performing at that level, you're just like, oh, well, this isn't good at all. Like, he kind of sucks, but that's not the case at all. So you can't really use that, but you can, in my opinion, use the way that he performed in high pressure situations for Sentinels as a way and meaning to detract from him, because like every single one of their major losses this year came in a place where TenZ is underperforming, and that maybe speaks a little bit more to Sentinels as a team more than TenZ as a player, but you're going to look at those and discount him because of it.
Yeah. You have anything you want to say real quick before we move on to the next one, Connor?
I don't think there's anything else to add. I mean,
yeah,
they covered it. Like, it's
well, then I'll start you with or actually, I'm not gonna start you with this one because hold on, just let me do my thing here. Hold on, watch me produce. Okay, next, another Jett, the Jett who a lot of people started putting above TenZ because of that second half of the year, is Envy's Ye. Started the year with Anbox, finished it with Envy. Dominated most of the year, even when he was on Anbox. I mean, he was a bit more under the radar, obviously, because the team wasn't finding success, but his stats were still crazy. And then he switched over to Envy. They had a crazy run at Berlin, made it into second place. Ye, if it weren't for Nats having an all-time god tournament, I mean, Ye was certainly in the MVP running for that tournament specifically.
He had an all-time god performance there, too.
He did. I mean, he did as well. He was in unbelievable form. So Ye, potential player of the year. What do you think, Balla?
I think the argument is hard to make. I definitely would have him like nominated, but for him to win is very, very difficult. When you already just thinking about the two players that we've talked about, the problem for him is that he didn't find like a win, right? And that is always, when I look at these, I'm thinking of players who've actually brought their teams to wins. And he brought them to a second place, but they weren't able to actually win, which is that's it, basically.
Yeah.
He really is a god player, though, and deserves nominated for this kind of thing, because I would like to pose the question, what would have happened if he was playing for Envy all year long? You know, like if the first period of the year had not been him buried on a tier 2 team where he was still putting up god numbers on Anbox. I mean, the numbers on Anbox were even better than they were on Envy, just because he was hard carrying the team even harder. Other people weren't doing the fragging to kind of temper his numbers in some sense. But, you know, if that had been the case, he probably would have a strong argument, somewhat similar to a TenZ kind of thing, where he looks insane the first half of the year, and then even at Berlin, I mean, amazing. And then it's just his champions performance where they go out in groups where we'd be questioning it. Again, he doesn't have that win that TenZ does, but second place at Berlin is also still pretty incredible. So the guy's certainly been one of the best players of the year, despite the fact that he came into it a little later than some of the other people that we're nominating.
Yeah, I mean, God, Kurt just has the yay clips playing there, and it's just reminding me of how crazy he was at Berlin. Holy shit, that guy is good. Connor, I want to start you with this next nominee.
Sorry.
What?
Well, Josh had something to add. He had something to add.
Well, the only thing that I had to add was just a quick note. If you're keeping track at home, see how many of these players are Jets and see if that's a problem for the game.
2 of them right now. Right now, 2 of them. But yeah, Connor, I want to start you with this one. I know you love him.
Oh,
It's
I
Chronicle.
do heckin' love him.
It's
I do
Chronicle from Gambit.
Cool.
He's so heckin' good. I remember when I proposed at Berlin, I was like, this Chronicle guy fucking owns. And everyone was like, I'm not sure. Like, he's pretty good. But then I was like, no. He fucking dominates, okay? And this has just turned into a humble brag for myself, really.
I know. So Chronicle is up for nomination for award, and Avast is just talking about his own successes.
I'm the best at prophesizing who will win Player of the Year.
He's an insanely clutch player. He has, not only did he used to, when I think we just only took his Berlin performance, which is weirdly, he came onto the radar, I think, a bit, but he was getting incredible impact frags for them in Berlin, like all the time. Like, you know, you talk about like not looking at stats that much. It's not like Chronicle stats were bad by any means. He had some very good games, but he had just incredibly good impact frags and clutch moments consistently in Berlin and moving to champs, but then get the champs, and the guy was fucking top fragging some maps as well for this team over Devo and Nats. And he's just been such an incredibly good player in his role. And I think compared to a lot of these players on the list, like really the only one, when you think about some of the other players, when you put them on the list here, is that he is also arguably the most clutch. I think he's arguably the most impact heavy with a lot of his kills and the rounds that he plays in too, and just how good he is with mid-round adjustments comparatively, as Balla is fucking just pixelating in the background.
I mean, when you talk about the most clutch of the names we have on here, I think both of them might both be on Gambit. I mean, it might be Chronicle and Nats. Yeah, I mean, even some of these clips though that Kurt has playing in the background of him at Champions, like the ones that we saw on that previous map on Breeze, it was maps like those where Crew they finished the first half in the lead 8-4 on defense on Breeze, and then Chronicle just went insane to bring them back into that game and win that map. I mean, the Gambit could have been. They absolutely could have been out of Berlin before the finals against Crew, but Chronicle went insane in this series. On Bind as well, like he got, I'm sure it'll play at some point. The ace he got at the end of this game, he went fucking nuts. I mean, he absolutely, if Chronicle isn't, if he doesn't win this award, I mean, you could certainly say he was possibly like the best initiator of the year. I mean, he really was just insane. But anything you guys want to add, Josh or Balla?
I think for Chronicle, the only argument against him really being up here is the fact that he doesn't really pop onto the radar, at least for me, until Berlin. Like, I don't think that he was. I might have to go back over like the VODs and stuff. Perhaps he was playing like this and we just didn't realize it. But to me, heading into Berlin, it was all about Nats, and then to me it was then Shados that I was looking at, and so Chronicle was then either third, or I guess you could even argue fourth, because Defo plays the Jett role and picks up the op for them so much and is such a crucial part of how they play. But he's somewhere around that kind of level, and really he proved himself, I think, once they got to LAN, and that is another thing where the more we see LAN events perhaps throughout 2022, the more we might feel like Chronicle is an elite player because he always steps up at the big events that are on LAN.
Yeah, guys, get the Windex out.
Going. Yeah, I mean, it's going absolutely wild over there.
All right.
But I think it's fair.
Next up, nominee, hot off the Champions win, is Zeke. Balla, tell me about Zeke.
Yeah, this guy, I think, like, he comes onto Ascend and just elevates his game onto a great. The first thing I noticed about Zeke was the versatility when he joined G2. that he had. He was playing Sage, he was playing Raze, he was playing so many different agents, and he just was consistently like pretty good. And then you see him play on Ascend, and you watch him play on like a map like Binds, and you're just like, wow, okay, this guy is actually good. And then he steps up at Champions. I think that performance at Champions is the only thing that puts him into consideration, but it puts him so deep into consideration for Player of the Year that everybody else, you think about their Champions performance, and I think the only person you can really compare him against is like Chronicles in terms of that performance. So yeah, I think he's very valid of a nomination.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Zeke was really good at Berlin too, but I don't know. Do you think did he do enough over the entirety of the year to potentially win this?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's a little like the TenZ question, right? He does have a win under his belt the same way that TenZ does, and he was the MVP of that tournament in the same way that TenZ was. Did he carry them in the same way that TenZ did? I would argue not. I don't think that he had that level of outsized impact compared to the rest of his team, but he was still the best player on his team, and I would argue that Champions is worth more than Reykjavik was. So that comes down to how much you want to weight the different tournament performances and think about what Zeke did earlier on in the year, where, for example, he was playing for like Nolpenki for a while in G2, where by no means was he a bad player. He was a great player, but he wasn't consistently competing against tier 1 opponents, and his teams, I mean, when he was playing for Nolpenki, were pretty I don't know what's the word, like very loose, and he was just kind of running it down and relying on his individuals a lot. And I mean, he was IGLing at the time as well, so I don't know. It's he really comes on to your radar late in the year, but does so much at the end of the year that he sneaks onto the list.
Yeah. Getting towards the end of the nominees here, we do have another Jett. It's Charles CNED Neddington. I mean, CNED, definitely a strong case, I think. I mean, starts the year with Ascend, getting a win at, I guess, what you would consider Masters 1, right? Even though it was online in Europe. But he starts the year with a win there and ends the year with a win at Champions. Surely that's got to be up for consideration, right?
Yeah, I don't think you could not. I mean, when you think of players that define the year, and like obviously Josh raised the point of like a lot of these are Jett players, but to be fair, CNED exploded onto the scene in terms of like his awareness of like the wider scene and just how much he was sort of framed as this carry as CNED and friends, you know, and really I feel like in many ways that didn't really change until Champions. When you think about CNED and his placement on his teams, he's that he just kind of dominated for a really long time, and he was also the quintessential. When you think of like people that op, I think the two biggest, like when you think just like pure oppers in this game, though obviously I wouldn't really consider CNED a pure opper or they're his component, but like Ye and CNED are like the two oppers, you know?
Yeah, I mean
Shazam.
And Shazam, of course,
sure.
but Shazam's
well.
obviously he has a wider berth than just his op play, right? He's got a lot more going on for him.
Sure. I think that like when you think about any of the Jett players on the list, even though there might be a lot, he's the only guy I would say had an actual impact on meta, right? When we go back to that argument that we had for Nats, CNED is at Masters 1, that was the first time people were really like, holy shit, like he's actually using it in ways that is breaking setups. That was like not the first, but he was the most prominent use of smoke dashing for a lot of people, and just his mobility with the Jett was something that everybody started to replicate after that, you know. So big ups to CNED for that, but also just the success is hard to argue against.
Yeah, his success has just been fantastic. If you look at his performance, even if you want to go right back to the beginning of the year in Masters 1, sure, it's only in Europe. It's not even an EMEA title, but he hard carried his team. I mean, he just hard carried his team. He was easily the best player in Europe at that time. And then if you move things later on. Other than Reykjavik, he's been an elite level player at every competition he's played in, like absolutely up there with the best players. And he also has that first Masters title and the Champions title now under his belt, along with the quarters in Berlin. So he's not only one of the most winning players of the year, but he also has been profoundly impactful in every tournament he's played in. I think possibly you could argue his least impactful was at Champions, and he was still in the top players. It's just that Zeke was even better than he was. But it's not like he was bad compared to the other Jets. It's not even like he was mediocre compared to the other Jets. He was really good. It's just that the competition wasn't defined about Jet carries.
And they just, I mean, at Champions, Ascend they never needed CNED in carry mode, because everyone else was just playing so well. It was, so it's like, dude, how much can you even take away from that at that point, right?
Well,
and then when
you might be able to use the Berlin performance as a down factor, but even then he was playing well. So
yeah, I mean, even then, when you hear the 100 Thieves comms, they activated Strat Avoid CNED to win. I mean, it was just even just defined that game that they lost. But all right, last player nominee we have is Shazam from Sentinels. He has to be on the list. I mean, Shazam just had an unbelievable year. IGL of the team, that's always, of note, that'll always be brought up. But also individually, I mean, absolutely defined how Icebox was played for a while at the beginning of the year with his Jett play and the comp that Sentinels were running at the time. His Jett was just so dominant on the map. They had a stretch of time over the first half of the year where they would just never lose Icebox, and so much of that was because of his opping. And that was the case at Iceland too. Even if you remember at the beginning at Iceland when they were playing against Fnatic, it was Shazam just popping off on Jett that kept them in that game, because they actually started pretty slow. And then TenZ really came alive later. But throughout all of that, Shazam was still playing super well. Picked up playing more. The Sova when TenZ joined the team. At Berlin, when they didn't have as good of a showing, he still was playing pretty well. His stats were still pretty good. And then I think he was the MVP of Sentinels for what they did show at Champions. It was when he was playing Breach on Fracture, he was nutty. His Sova was looking excellent. His stats were great again. I mean, I feel like he played well throughout the entire year on a number of roles while IGLing for Sentinels. I mean, he's just got to be a nominee, and he's got to be in the running to win, surely.
Also did that while suffering, great personal tragedy, and it too. Like, managed to perform excellently and have a winner's mentality, even when something that would generally slow down a lot of people, when they're a serious competitor, and at least like put you through a little bit of a loop. And he stayed really, really confident, strong, consistent the whole time. Which is why I think it's so incredible about him, is that there are definitely other IGLs that show that defeat the IGL mentality of like, oh, you have to be a bonkar if you're IGL, right? Like they're
catching a stray.
They catching a stray again. I'm sorry, bonkar, catching a stray then. But there are definitely plenty of IGLs that have good individual performances. But I think Shazam is one of the few is like definitely one of the elite tier of IGLs that are not only super flexible, but also an elite player and high impact player in his own right when he's playing, So it's kind of hard not to put him in this list. Like, it would be almost impossible,
I think the knocks for him come essentially when one considers how great Sentinels were at being able to bounce back and adapt to their opponents and always beat them or always overcome them across 2020 and the the latter portion of 2020 and the early portion of 2021, and how that just kind of fizzled out a little bit at Berlin and at Champions. His fate is somewhat linked with that of TenZ because they're on the same team, and it's not the same narrative the entire time, because I actually thought that like the way that Sentinels was IGLing the mid-round decisions, the stuff that they were doing was pretty fine at Berlin and at Champs, but they didn't have in the first the right compositions and comfortability on those kind of roles, and having poor individual performances, and Champions didn't have the right amount of stuff prepped. So I don't think it's even though it's a negative, the fact that he IGLs and the team didn't perform as well as it did during these major tournaments, it's not all on his shoulders, I don't think. So I don't think it excludes him at all from being able to win. Just the fact that he IGLs the team and they didn't win, I don't think that excludes you from being player of the year.
Yeah, definitely. All right, moving on from the players, we have the team of the year. And what better team to talk about than Sentinels? We're just speaking of the Shazam. I mean, Sentinels, obviously, they are the face of Valorant. They're their team, and it's because of the immense success that they had for such a long period of time. So yeah, Sentinels, potential team of the year. What do you guys think?
I think they have a very strong argument. But when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, sure, they won Reykjavik. That's the first event. They get bonus points because it's the first event. And then they get bonus points because they're just always in the conversation so much that it just skews the narrative. But when you actually like look at gameplay and the actual results of tournaments, it falls flat. I think it just
Pish
falls
posh. Don't give me gameplay. Don't give me gameplay. I ingest pure hype. I am a hype beast. I'll be the advocate for Sentinels then, because here's how I see it. You not only have a team that's done well at international tournaments, they won Reykjavik, and okay, they only made quarters and got grouped at champions, but their placements are not necessarily correlated, with how the team was playing. Like, I think that they actually played a really good game at champions, and they happened to get grouped because they were just with fierce opposition. So I'm not holding that champions grouping too much against them. You know, in my head, it's pretty equivalent to making like a quarters at Berlin. Honestly, I don't think one is massively worse than the other. But here's where I think the argument for Sentinels comes in. They have absolutely dominated North American competition all year long. And North America is either first or second. At the beginning of the year, it looked like the strongest region. Towards the end of the year, once you've got like, you know, Gambit and Ascend making it really deep and winning Berlin and then winning champions, the argument probably goes in favor of EMEA. But the North America is still in number 2. And is right neck and neck with EMEA. So to be able to have that level of domestic dominance and still get 1 out of 3 of the LAN titles of the year, to me, obviously puts you in the conversation. And they are head and shoulders above the pack in a way that nobody is within EMEA.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, also, it wasn't just a LAN win. It was also an incredibly dominant LAN victory too for the one that they did win. So it was crazy. Just I think that's something that I had to think about, was like, yeah, they only won one event, but the event they did win, it was kind of a blowing people out of the water with how good it was for them. So it's hard not to put them on the list. I will think though that they've kind of I don't know. It's a hard one. It's a hard one though.
I do think they also I think they hit that criteria as well though of like the influence on the scene. I mean, they were so influential on the first half of the year. Everyone was trying to play like them. And then after Iceland, everyone was trying to run the comps that they're running and play like TenZ and Shaz. Like, they were massively influential on the scene. But I do, sorry, did you have a point you really want to make, Balla? Because I did want to keep...
No, you made the point. That's basically what I was going to say.
Cool. Next team of the year, I mean, they have to be on the list. And I think for a lot of people, they might be the front runners. They're Gambit. Do you want to start with them, Balla?
Yeah, sure. First and second in the last 2 international LANs.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty damn fun.
Not bad.
I mean, that's almost all the argument you need for them to be front runners. But on top of that, I think they are the most complete team out of any of the teams that we've seen this year. I think they are easily the most complete team. And when I say that, I mean tactically, I mean player wise, their firepower, and then their adaptability and creativity. It's literally all there. Whereas you think of other teams, you think of Sentinels, for example, you don't see as much creativity coming from them, right? You think of Fnatic, and you're like, wow, a lot of creativity, but they're lacking on this aspect. Whereas Gambit, there's literally, I mean, Josh is gonna try, but you can't actually come up with any aspect that they're not almost leading the pack in.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a TenZ or a Yay on their team, do they? That's
they just have an incredibly consistent, very good duelist player with Defo. But no, you know,
content creation.
Boring.
They're not at the top.
Where are the streams?
True.
Where are
Social
the
media.
streams? Another potential team of the year. I mean, Ascend, obviously. I mean, they won Masters 1 in Europe, and then they won Champions at the end of the year.
I mean, technically, they won the only tournament of the year, so...
True. Yeah, the only non-qualifier tournament they did win.
Everything else was a qualifier for champions, and they won.
Seeding games.
I don't even care about Reykjavik. That was a seeding game. Sentinels only North America's only ever won seeding games. Sentinels are not a real team. Yeah. No, the argument though, when you look at, like, you could say, okay, that Ascend won the European Masters 1, but Gambit won the CIS Masters 1. So that's pretty much equivalent, but it isn't. When you, at the time, it was obvious from watching the matches that were happening that EMEA was pretty far ahead at that point. And Gambit, though there was talk about them and they were doing interesting things, they weren't yet at the same level as like the Heretics and Ascend were of that time. And Ascend honestly burst out of nowhere. And we thought there might be a bit of a flash in the pan. If you remember, there was the scandal about their coach being able to talk to them during the match as well, and like IGL for them. And we were like, oh, well, maybe this team's not going to be very good afterwards. And then they win champions and like look really competent heading into Berlin, like they were potentially the favorites there as well. So this team has been able to achieve stuff all year long. It's not just the fact that they win champions. Obviously, champions is going to be overrated in a lot of people's heads. It is only one tournament, but they've still done a lot outside of that too.
Also, I think champions, even if it is one tournament, it's also, for the most part, obviously there's some outliers, the culmination of just they're playing against the best competition for the entire year on average, right? Obviously, there is something up for debate depending on like how the format worked for VCT before that and like getting teams in there, but it is supposedly against the overall best competition of the whole year, comparatively, like holistically. So there are some points I think to be given to that, to winning champions, and doing well at champions overall when you consider the factor of what champions actually is supposed to be.
Definitely. And I think on the front where we're talking about teams being influential as well, unfortunately, we're not going to really see that yet, whether or not they'll be influencing the meta heading into 2022. And it might just be totally irrelevant because the balance changes might be so significant that what they were doing at Champions, no one's even going to really want to be using that anymore anyhow. But I do think at the beginning of the year, after winning the EU Masters at the very top of the year, I do think they were pretty influential in that actually as well. There were a lot of NA teams that started running their comps, doing stuff that they were doing. 100 Thieves were running their comps. Running really similar, actually, like damn near stealing some of their pistol strats and shit, if I remember correctly. So they still were pretty influential at the beginning of the year. Maybe not as much as Sentinels and Gambit, but to a bit of an extent. Next up, potential team of the year, Fnatic. Second at Iceland, made it to the quarterfinals at Champions, had a good showing there. What do you guys think? Do you think that they have a real shot, Josh?
Okay, why'd you put me on the spot for that one? Why am I always the one that has to shout down Fnatic?
Because I want to get you in another Fnatic TikTok. That's why.
You're a
say
pain
something,
in the ass,
Josh. Say something about how Fnatic will have a bad 2022 for clout. So they'll use this clip, and then they'll come back to our show.
I'm not going to say it. But also, they're not going to win this award. Obviously, they're not going to win this fucking award because they're up against Gambit and Ascend.
Can we have the win just so we can put that in a video? just for the clout.
It's, you know, it's a decent. They did decently this year. They did pretty well. Yeah. They had that great showing at Reykjavik. They frankly didn't really do too much for the rest of the year. They weren't good for Masters 1 and they weren't good for Masters 3, like at all. They weren't even on the radar of being top 10 teams, as far as I can remember at all, during that time period. So then as you move into Champions, our expectations, or at least my expectations, were relatively low, and that ended up being incorrect. So I think they deserve credit for being able to showcase that they are a legit team. But they're not going to win this over Ascend or Gambit. I mean, how could they possibly? They only made quarters Champions.
They've earned themselves a fair nomination in the Plat Chat Awards, as have maybe this team, even though, you know, I love them, and God, do I just want to vamos but I can't because surely Crew aren't the team of the year, but they did get a nomination, and I think they deserve it. I think they absolutely deserve it.
I mean, just the story in general for this team is fucking incredible, and they had the best comebacks of the year, and they also had this fucking steady improvement that I don't think any team has replicated at all. Where it's just like they've made every single tournament and then they improve. The problem is that they come from a region where it was easy for them to do that. It wasn't easy by any means, but like they did it without anybody really questioning whether they would not, you know?
Yeah.
I think Crew has a better chance of winning this than Fnatic myself.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. Like that's just kind of simply because of the performance of champions, right? Because if you like, sure, if they had Fnatic had a better earlier year, but like their performance, and then also when you add the narrative behind it, if they come from a region that no one was expecting anyone to do anything and have such an incredibly good performance of champions in particular. But also not just that, they had relatively, even before that, the other two events, they had decent showings still. Like not great showings, not good showings by any means, but decent showings. And they had a blow-up performance here at Champ. So, but even if I do love fucking Crew, I don't think they should necessarily win this award though. But I do think they are fucking amazing.
I'm interested to see how many people. I think this award is clearly between Gambit and Ascend. Even though I love Crew and I'm sure many people are fans of Sentinels, I think it's. I'm just interested to see whether the fan vote aligns with that, because I'm interested to see how deep the copium is for North America in particular. I want to know how many people are on that Sentinels train.
Okay, next up, the next potential Plat Chat award. I mean, it is a Plat Chat award, not potential, but these are the potential winners. The Coach of the Year award. First up, we have Eng, the stoic, brutally honest Russian for Gambit. I mean, obviously was with Gambit for a while and was a part of their journey to, making it deep in all these tournaments. Certainly a potential nominee. I mean, honestly, a lot of the Coach of the Year, you're going to kind of need results, right? You could be a great coach,
right,
but if you don't have results, it's just kind of out the window.
Yeah,
but Josh,
I do think that's valid. There has to be some correlation with results for sure. But to me, what I'm looking at more when it comes to Coach of the Year is the kind of stuff that I don't think is going to come from the players, right? And that's difficult to tell from an outside perspective. But I'm looking at kind of how elaborate are your setups, how much thought has gone into how different people in different parts of the map synergize with each other, your overall strategy when you head into a match or a map. And that to me is concrete from Gambit. It's so good. And I'm sure Redguard does a lot of it. And it's very difficult to tell how much is on who. But the amount of different setups and how fantastic they are defensively and how they can just flow from one setup into another. And then also what they were just talking about in terms of how much they do practice, and Eng is constantly leading that practice, obviously. And they're one of the teams that practices the most. I think probably they are the team that practices the most in the world. And that's all been led by Eng, and they're so drilled in terms of all of these plays that it leads me to give a lot of credit to that coaching staff, not just because they get results. There are other teams that have got excellent results this year that I wouldn't credit to coaches. I mean, obviously, Sentinels, they don't have a coach, So obviously, it's not all just about results.
Yeah.
But I think in this instance,
he's got the suit on. He has the suit over the jersey.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think this next name is a good one to go off the back of, saying not necessarily having results, though the results weren't poor, but it's Sliggy from Team Liquid. I mean, Sliggy is one of the coaches that has been talked about the most since the dawn of the game because he's been pretty vocal about his opinions on the. Let me just break some shit for a funny moment. Oh, let me start breaking glass. But Sliggy's been pretty vocal about his opinions on the game, the direction of Valorant, how he wants his team to be structured. But then also, when you actually look at the results, they've been good for Liquid, not amazing. What do you think about Sliggy for this, Balla?
I think the positive thing though for Sliggy is that literally every single time they have good results, you could clearly tell the influence that Sliggy had on those games, right? You think
Sure.
about the Reykjavik qualifier, just fucking Sliggy out the wazoo, bro. He is fucking everywhere, all over those comps, the bind comp, all those strats that they had. And that's good, but also I feel like part of that is a reason why Team Liquid in some cases wasn't able to excel, because they were so run by Sliggy in a way. That's how it felt at sometimes and throughout the year. And I'm like, well, okay, they can't do much else besides the stuff that they're bringing to the table, the new stuff that they're bringing to the table. So that's a drawback. But in terms of the creativity stuff and how much he was able to bring into the team from an outsider's perspective, he's like literally the only coach who you could straight up see his influence, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it might be tough for Crew to win Team of the Year, but perhaps their coach, Honor, could win the Coach of the Year. And I think that's a pretty fair shout, honestly, given that we had just seen him working with Crew all year. Every tournament, as you said before, Balla, just improvement. From Iceland to Berlin, they improved. From Berlin to Champions, they improved. They just improved all year. He worked with them all year. Surely that has to, put him in the running, right? I mean, you can't really ask for much more from a coach than that.
Also, their baseline was, I mean, the one thing that we always harped on about this team was that they always felt like out of all the other minor region teams, and even many of the major region teams, their understanding of the flow of the game.
Such a good tweet.
This is a really good tweet, actually. Their understanding of the flow of the game and their actual reads and adjustments were always so good too. Like when you watch them play, you could say like they 100% understood what was happening, and it's not very often you saw them just lost, right? It's like they had very good reads all the time. Obviously, how much of that is on the IGL, right? But surely you have to put some of that in the coach in terms of how well they managed to consistently understand what was happening in game.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think something that hasn't been talked about is the fucking Crew timeouts, at least in Champions.
Oh, yeah, the Crew timeouts
are fucking deadly down in the overtime.
Very good
stretches,
timeouts.
Down on the match point places where they're up and they're just taking a timeout and they just win the game after it. It's like probably the most effective that you've seen, and you could tell. Not only I like that the first three coaches that we've seen, we've had like complete different like ways that we're appreciating their coaching from, right? Because Angus, like, he's in the dark. You kind of see him talking during the game, but you really don't know what he does. Sliggy, you know that he does a lot. And then Owner, you don't really know. You know by the timeouts, but you also know based off the amount that their players are talking about Owner and his contribution to the team.
Yes.
And how much, like, he was the leading. Like, when you watch them in Champions, when you watch their celebrations, when you watch them get onto the stage, you could tell he was the fucking leader of that team. Like, everybody's looking towards him, right?
Definitely.
That's something that's really cool out of this coaching discussion.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Mini from Fnatic. Josh, tell me about Mini. I'm just going to give you every single thing with Fnatic in hopes that they use it for social content.
You're an absolute nightmare. Okay, I think Mini though really does deserve this nomination for Coach of the Year, partly because there aren't a huge amount of coaches that we know have had big impact on teams, and Mini is certainly one of them, because Boaster talks about how much Mini helps him come up with these kind of setups and strategies, and Fnatic themselves are a very strat heavy team, and so there you've got like this obvious path towards crediting Mini and giving him and appreciating his input within the team. I think as well as this, something we haven't mentioned yet that applies to Sliggy, Owner, and Mini actually, is that all three of these coaches have made smart roster moves throughout the year to ensure that their roster gets better. And, you know, for Sliggy, that's bringing in Yampi and Navera. That's on Sliggy. That's him going out, finding these players. For Owner, he's getting Kesnet and bringing him in. For Mini, it's getting these players and running these trials to be able to get Durka and Magnum onto the team throughout 2021. Like, these are big moves that have been orchestrated by the coaches that also provide massive value to the team's success throughout the year. So I do really think that Mini deserves credit for how well Fnatic have done this year.
Sure. And last NBS from Ascend. Surely the champions win got to get you a bit of a nomination. Another one of those coaches that I saw as well when you had mentioned earlier with Aang from Gambit bringing up the amount of scrim time and practice time. I know he was one of the other coaches that had brought up just how much they had just been practicing throughout this year.
Yeah, but interestingly with NBS, he's one of those coaches that actually believes less is more in a lot of instances. And so I think even if NBS gets a lot of success over the course of his career, if he keeps that philosophy, he probably won't win many of these awards because of the way that he kind of sets the team up. He sets the team up to be very confident in themselves and the decisions that they're making and tries to empower them as much as possible. Is that a valid and really good coaching philosophy a lot of the time? Yeah, absolutely. But it's so different to what people traditionally appreciate from coaches. People think of great coaches as being the people with the strats or the people with the amazing timeouts or the people that have impact like within the server changing how the players play. NBS to me feels like more of the coach that's trying to figure out how to get the best out of his players. And if the best thing to do is just leave them alone at times, that's what he'll go for.
Well, he also clearly had the most. He wins by default because of his Masters 1 performance, which is better than everybody else.
True. He literally, I mean, none of the other coaches IGL'd their team
in real time.
I do really like that point though. But also when I think about like other sports and esports and whatnot, I actually think that those coaches get a lot of credit in some regards. Like Phil Jackson, for example, from the NBA, like literally has one strat and the rest of it is just empowerment of his players, is one of the best coaches of all time. So yeah, it might take longer to develop and we'll still need that coaching like information gap to be filled to really understand that. But there's merit to it in a way that other coaches probably aren't in that regard either.
All right. Next award. The Match of the Year award. What was the biggest gigabanger of 2021?
Oh God, this is
this is hard.
There's actually a lot on this gigabanger list. The first gigabanger, that's fine. Some of them, Kurt, there's a lot on here, but some of these, I'm even just going to say myself, that shit's not winning. Cool match, not winning an award though. Like this first one, the Sen vs Fnatic Reykjavik Finals. Cool match. First international LAN final. Not winning this award though.
Whoa. You say it's not even in the run-in to win the award? I think it's in the run-in.
No, I'm just saying it's not. But, do you see the other matches on this list?
Yeah, I mean, but they've been amazing matches. But
I'm gonna give you one head-to-head. Sen vs Fnatic Reykjavik Finals and where is it? Crew vs Sentinels in Champions. Come on.
Okay, one is the first international final we've ever had in the game that absolutely slapped, solidified North America as being a dominant force within this esport, got a bunch of NA fans involved, cemented Sentinels on the map. The other's a group stage game.
Don't care.
Not in it.
Don't care. Just because that's a logical fallacy here, and I'm gonna say why. I appreciate the wheel, and when the wheel was first invented, a bunch of cavemen lost their shit. But I don't care about the wheel anymore. I don't care about the wheel anymore. Nor do I care about Sentinels and Fnatic in Iceland anymore. So I'm just gonna say it. I don't care. The wheel's great.
Avast, you realize you get around with wheels on your fucking car, bro.
But I'm not excited. I don't go over there and say, "Holy fuck!" I'm not excited about the wheel. I appreciate them, but So.
I mean, honestly, just absolutely obliterated by facts and logic. Next on the list is Gambit versus Send, the Champions Final. Now, the Champions Final was really
not going
to
win an award. Not going to win. Not going
to win. No, I don't think so either. Really good. Went to all 5 maps. Really good. Not going to win. Too many of the maps. Not that exciting. Kurt, don't worry about pulling them all up. I'm rifling through some of these because that's not winning. We can all agree that that's not winning, right?
Yeah.
Also,
okay,
all
next
European.
Too much pausing, boring.
All European. Sleep.
Yeah, all Europeans. Resident Sleeper. Slow gameplay. Resident Sleeper. Now this, not Resident Sleeper because it's Gambit versus Crew in the Champions semi-final.
Fucking Omega banger.
That was a gigabanger.
Unbelievable mega gigabanger. That shit pounded. And to me, it's for a couple of reasons. One, because it kind of was the either apex or finishing moment of the crew storyline, which is also incredible. Secondly, it gets the defending champions of Gambit from Berlin into the finals. Again, incredible storyline, just like from both directions. And then also the fucking rounds on Bind, bro. The rounds were just insane.
It's the series started with that crazy Breeze comeback on defense from Gambit, where Chronicle was just pounding to bring them back into that game. And then it finishes in the overtime on Bind, where he also brought them into it with that ace. The Gambit players individually were just all popping at the end of this game, winning round. There was just individual play winning round. It was, actually an insane game.
The problem with this series, though, is that, Breeze was a comeback, but it ended 13-8. Ascent, 13-7. Those two maps, at the end of the day, were not that exciting. They just weren't. And it was this last map that was the Gigabanger that cemented it with all the storylines, cements it as a contender for sure. I definitely would potentially vote for this match, but I think it hurts to look at those first two maps.
But I think Breeze added an intense emotional dynamic to this game, because you watched Crew, the underdog story, go up 8-4 on defense on Breeze. It's like, holy shit, they're gonna do it, and then they get
hooked you in,
rolled, and they lose that first map, and you're crushed. And then they bring it back on Ascent, which Ascent, nah. And then the last map, unbelievable. That's actually definitely.
I might be downplaying Ascent a little bit, because that game was fucking cool too. The stuff that was going on with the I'm thinking of a different map now.
I mean, also Ascent.
I thought it was Gambit versus Ascent in the finals. That was way better.
It was still good though, because you think about it, like obviously they had because I think at this point they had already had the match versus, was it X10, right? That beat Gambit on Ascent.
Yes.
Am I thinking of?
We
so like
knew that their Ascent was.
We knew
cool.
their Ascent wasn't that good, but narrative wise, going into this, we thought Gambit's Ascent was really, really good, right? So there still was something, like even though they'd lost one map on it, they'd lost it once in champs. So like there was still potentially some viability that like they would have a really good Ascent, right? There was no guarantee that they were going to lose that map.
This next one is some absolute European copiates. We have Ascend versus Heretics from the Masters 1 final.
It was so good.
All 2,600 people that watched that game loved it. Tell me about it, John.
It was actually insane, though. Don't even bring up a clip. Just bring up the stats, please. Just
bring up the stats
for one moment. For one moment, look at the statistics, because it tells the story a little bit. Look, no, look at this. Look at this.
Here,
just scroll down. Scroll down.
Let's take a look.
Look at the stats.
Look, God, you are a dork. No, dude, come back. Look at the numbers.
Look. Ascend won this game. No, don't scroll in that far. I can't see a thing, can you? But everyone on Ascend is negative, and then CNED is plus 30, and they won the match 3-2, and they toppled the defending giants of Europe at that point. And CNED put in a god performance, put himself on the map. This is where Ascend, the eventual champions of the year, come out swinging. It's also probably the best finals we've actually had in Valorant in terms of a tournament final. It genuinely is. It was actually nuts the entire way through. Well, like 6K ace rounds, just CNED popping the fuck off the entire time. It was legit.
If this was Champions Finals, it would win without even a fucking blink. Because this series, y'all fucking looking at this and going, EU Copian is some NA Copian, because this game was so fucking good.
Remember it was good.
The fucking Masters 1 NA Finals was some dog shit.
I know. I remember that it was good.
This was the first amazing series that I fucking experienced in VCT.
It was the first love. It was our first loves of 2021.
This actually honestly has more of a shot of winning than the Fnatic Sentinels game, for sure. 100%, I think. I'll say it. How do
you just come back and you're like, oh, this is from EU Copium, and then you're like,
we're moving on. There's so many matches. We're moving on. It's time for NA Copium. It's time for NA. We have 100 Thieves versus Rise in the LCQ. I mean, this is some actual NA copiates. It was like,
all right, hold on. That game was a gigabanger. It was so fucking good.
It was a good game. But the stakes in this were just, they were not high enough
What do you mean? It's last chance qualifier. You
Bro, it's
die or
like, yeah, but
something.
it's just the
Imagine
tier 2
100
region.
teams,
and
they
they
win
won.
this
You
game,
win 100
they go to
teams,
champs,
but
they
die.
win champs.
Wait, what?
Exactly.
I mean, it was a really good game. And it ended in cool fashion on Haven with the poise did holy shit, he's got the wall and the ults, and they went C, but then they went A, what? And then they won. It was cool. It was a cool match. But that being said, I don't think there's enough prestige around the match to just be the emotional investment wasn't there
Agreed.
like it was for some of these other ones,
Was a banger though.
Also, I need water. Hold on.
Alright, he's
Okay,
gone.
I need
He's
to
gone.
wait for Wyatt to come back for this point because I think it actually influences the way that these votes will go. Actually, I don't think he'll vote for it. The Ascend Heretics
There's no
game.
the Balla. It's only me and you that will ever vote for the Ascend Heretics game, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, Balla. I still wouldn't vote for it. I ranked them myself, and I
Yeah.
can tell you it ranked 4th for me. It was
Wow.
my 4th best match of 2021, and it hurt me to rank it that low, but
Okay,
it
what's
was
your point,
mostly
Balla?
because
But
it was a
okay,
little
when you
older.
talk about like the 100 Thieves Rise series and a game-ending moment and stuff like that, I think the reason why some of these series are really good is that they have such impactful rounds over and over and over. That's why the Gambit crew game in the end was really good because Gambit's hanging on by a thread and they're trying to come back and trying to come back. The Ascend Heretics game in that one, literally from Icebox Icebox was map 4. There was like 7 map ending, series ending potential clutches that almost happened.
Yeah.
And over and over and over, Ascend just hanging on. Those are the types of things that will really, really push a match over the top, I think.
Sure.
And why 100 Thieves Rise is underrated.
I think that's fair. I mean, yeah, it was a very good game. Okay, next up, we have Crew versus Sentinels at Champions. I mean, that game was a gigabanger. You had 2 huge comeback maps from Crew against
Josh
the
already
most.
killed this one. The group stage argument, he already fucking killed this one.
I mean, yeah, that is the problem. It's a group stage, but it's the underdog versus the absolute clout fucking machine that is Sentinels. So like the amount of viewers and hype that's around anything that has to do with the Sentinels and such an unbelievable
Also, the fashion that this
match was won, which was through the comebacks.
Good.
It was a crazy series.
Yeah. No, I mean it is
the
nuts.
biggest upset ever.
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, I think it still is. I think you could argue X10 over Envy, but
I think you could argue it's a bigger upset
there.
because of the nature. Like X and Envy, like I feel like the nature of the comebacks here made it a bigger upset because it was like statistically, like when you look at the round
that happened
differential.
at X10.
I guess that did happen X and Envy as well, didn't it? Fuck.
But not back to back. Sentinels was back to back maps.
So yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, if this was going to win, Gambit Crew was even better. So
yeah. Right.
You know,
and it
Crew
was in a more
outdid themselves.
pivotal part of the tournament.
No, I don't think it was. Well, yeah, for sure, pivotal part of the tournament, 100%. But I don't think it was a better match based on what I said about the first 2 maps. The last map was a gigabanger, but
I liked the first map. I really
was so good on this one. And then
the first map was
too.
actually super sad though because it was like Crew started out really well and they were kind of dominating, and then they just literally got flattened for their offense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but that's because you were emotionally invested in Crew. I was emotionally invested in Gambit, and I popped the fuck off.
But is that a good match though? Because it wasn't back and forth. It was literally just one team ran over the other, and then the other team ran over the other.
All right.
Well,
I'll tell you.
There was moments that were like 2 versus 5s and shit from Gambit on defense.
I demand we move to the
I've
next
got
match.
a game. Why? I want to nominate a game. I've got a game that meets a vast criteria of one team flattening another, and then the other team coming back and flattening, and it was still a banger that we're gonna talk about for so long, even though it wasn't the most important. It's 100 Thieves Gambit from Berlin. I mean, that game, it was a group stage game, but an 11-3 comeback with Hiko in that 1v3. That you're gonna remember it. You're gonna remember it before you've you'll have forgotten everything else about Berlin, and you'll still remember that. People will still be talking about that. They'll get it carved into Hiko's gravestone.
Yeah, that also goes right next to the 100 Thieves and Ascend at Berlin. I mean, those are 2 of the most unbelievable games of Valorant. I mean, those have to be absolutely both in the running near the top of this list. They were both incredible games with 2 incredible comebacks from 100 Thieves. never in my life have I felt more American pride than in those moments. And when I saw Nitro playing Jett, fucking Eagles crying, I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was pretty astounding, those two matches. Definitely both on the list. Also, what else do we have? We have Sentinels versus Team Liquid at Champions. I mean, that was a really good game, but also I think that falls into the group stage, the trap of being in a group stage. I think the only game
that was a banger.
I think the only one that won't fall into that trap is that 100 Thieves Gambit game, because some of those, like that Hiko clutch and the comeback is just so iconic.
No, the crew one should be allowed to because of the comebacks associated with it.
Yeah, I think it can be, but I mean,
and it was an elimination, which 100 Thieves
and it was also a
you know.
minor region team showing this, right? Like, there's still other elements to it that are big besides like just like group stage. If the 100 Thieves one can be in there, though, I guess with an A now, that is a minor region playing. So I mean,
I think I would say this is the hardest category to decide because it's purely and utterly subjective, depending on how invested you were at the time in the match and what your like viewing experience was like, who you were watching cast the game, or like, you know, do your co-stream of the game, or however you were watching it. So who you were with, you know what I mean?
Yep. All right.
What stage of your life you were in?
Exactly.
There's one more. Version 1 new turn at Reykjavik. That was a really good game.
You were in,
but
yeah.
All right,
that's a fun game, but I don't know if anyone's gonna be defending that one.
I'm just laughing.
What?
Josh said something and I started laughing, and I don't know what he said, so now I might look like a fucking idiot.
Doesn't matter.
I didn't even hear what he said either. He said something cheeky because he started smiling too, expecting a response. Like he said something cheeky, but I didn't hear it. Didn't hear what he said.
Didn't hear it either.
Perfect.
Hold this L. Next category. The in-game leader of the year. Who's it gonna be? Is it gonna be Redgar?
Mate, how couldn't it be? I'm just gonna there are other nominees, of course, but to me, all of the reasons why Eng would be my favorite for coach, Redgar would be my favorite for IGL. And yeah, Bone Cole made a tweet after Champions saying, I am the best IGL in the world. And I think to some extent, Ascend really did outplay Gambit in that, Champions game. But throughout the year, Redgar's IGLing has been phenomenal. And even if you have a bunch of preset stuff, being able to flow from one to the other, and like how he works people around the map and uses the pieces that he has available to him. And then also just this masterclass performance he did at Champions on Fracture as well, where it's really about how he manipulates the pieces and where he's telling people to push and the timings that he's going for. I'm in love with the Redgar IGL, and I'm not going to lie. I'm hardcore simping out here.
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, the next nominee is one that I have spent some time... What?
You just fucking roasted him. You just obliterated him.
I mean, it was just nothing. It was casual. I mean, the next one is one. I mean, listen, you're allowed to simp for Redgar because I've done an unbelievable amount of simpery for Shazam on this podcast for the last year and a half. And I will probably continue to do so in this moment because I do think that despite the year end for Sentinels, I do think Shaz deserves an immense amount of credit for the undertaking of leading that team with him. He's the support structure. He is the staff. He just has done an immense amount of work for the team. And
he is fucking brimstone holding up the earth.
Yeah, he actually is. And that, along with playing really well individually all year. So, I mean, just an absolute top tier IGL has to certainly be in the conversation for IGL of the year.
Yeah. Definitely.
I wanted to argue for Shazam, but when Josh argued for Redgar, and then I thought about like what Redgar plays and like how he just puts himself into that idea of him doing a lot of different things, and Gambit having a million different setups. You also see the amount of ways that they play with certain setups and the amount of roles that Redgar plays. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, Shazam just fucking plays the same shit.
Yeah, the dude only plays Sova and Jett to a top level.
No, he plays Breach. He plays Breach.
Yeah, Breach
his Breach is good too.
And Sky.
I know his Sky is on the same level as of those other agents. Though.
Haters
But,
everywhere.
But definitely his breach should definitely be
Haters
mentioned in
everywhere.
like terms of like what we saw of it should be mentioned as like an agent that he looked really good on. So
I also think it's really cool that he was like one of the few people who could IGL on Jett, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, he's a Jett IGL. This guy's cracked out." I actually think that is cool because I think that is such a stupid narrative that you have to IGL on a role that isn't a character like a duelist role.
Yeah.
I think that's such a stupid theme that the community has.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, God, individually, Shazam was just so good this year. Next on the list is Vanity. Do we think that Vanity is going to be potentially winning that? Paul doesn't know what the fuck I said that, but it was from a green screen clip of Josh.
yeah, it's a clip.
But do we think that Vanity has a chance at IGL of the year? I mean, certainly one of the top tier IGLs of the game. No one can dispute that. Finishing the year with Cloud9 winning the LCQ. Pretty good showing for Cloud9's first international LAN as well.
And that's a cool last name.
At Champions. And obviously made Reykjavik as well. So
here's the argument for Vanity. I think he's the only guy who you could literally say for sure his IGLing is the reason why his teams made it to the international lands. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody else you can't really say that about.
yeah.
Is someone playing Among Us? Does anyone keep hearing that beeping like a crewmate just died? Or was ejected? Does anyone else I swear to fucking God.
No.
Is Kurt playing Among Us on the production PC? Am I going crazy? Am I going fucking crazy?
Big bet.
Do you hear the beeping?
It's coming from Josh.
Oh,
Josh?
Josh
Yeah,
is playing Among Us on his other monitor.
It keeps on like a crewmate was ejected. It wasn't the fucking imposter. That's what it sounds like. I swear to fucking God.
I don't know what it is. It's probably an application running in the background, but it shouldn't be
Jesus,
coming up.
I'm sorry. That was. I'm sorry. This is driving me
because
crazy.
we started
I thought it was
talking about
Wilkinson.
Vanity, the imposter from
I
V1
just
joined
jumped out.
Cloud9.
It just jumped out.
Well, I wanted to talk about as well that maybe with all of this, you never really know what the IGL and the coaches are doing for the team unless the team talks about it. We don't really get access to the comms. And so you only know what IGLs do within the structure of their team. Right? Most of the time, because the game's so young, you don't really know whether an IGL is great or whether their team's great or whether their coach is great. You don't have the chance to see a control experiment. But for Vanity, you really do. Like, we've seen him in 2 different teams, and he's been able to use his pieces extremely effectively in both teams and get them both to major lands that they wouldn't have otherwise got to. Like, I'm guaranteeing they wouldn't have got to those events without Vanity there. So he's got to be in the running to actually win the award, I would say, because when you look at the impact versus him not being on the team, like you just get a random average IGL and put him in there. You don't know for a fact that these other teams would be significantly worse. You could be pretty confident with people like Redgar, Shaz, Boaster, those kind of people. But for Vanity, I mean, it's just there slapping you in front of the face. Like this guy makes teams good.
Yeah. The factor though that we're not taking into account is he did it in an inferior region that was proven that NA is worse at champion.
True.
Yeah. I mean, actually, sadly accurate. From the superior region, we have Boaster of Fnatic. I mean, Boaster certainly at the very least a nominee for what he's done with Fnatic over this past year. Managing to run the team, what seemed like at the beginning of the year from accounts from the players with pretty strict regimen. He was kind of micromanaging.
That role list is what an IGL should look like.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's even played, when the hell did he play Jett? But when was Poster playing Jett and Reyna?
Split Reykjavik finals.
Wait, was he playing it for
Not
Team
Reykjavik
UK?
finals. I'm talking about
the
qualifying match against Liquid.
I think he was playing Reyna on Split when he played against Liquid. I think that's from. I think he was playing it with Team UK or something. I think that's from like a troll tournament.
Yeah. But anyhow, Boaster certainly a nominee for the run at Reykjavik. Yeah, and I was just going to say, known as one of the IGLs who is pretty regimented with his team. From accounts from the players, a lot of he creates a lot of the plays. He creates a lot of the setups that they have, the little util micro pieces, little util combo pieces. He's really involved with that, and maybe it tapered off towards the end of the year, but at the beginning was like pretty heavy with the micromanaging, commanding his players' actual general Boaster on the roster.
If if you were to make an argument for him to win this, I think you'd have to also mention the fact that almost every single one of his players came from different games, and so he's that maybe was when did Sack and Doma leave or
like
Mo
2
leave?
months into the year, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was okay. So, anyways, so that applies there more so. But even Magnum and Durka, for some, didn't have that deep of experience in some of the attack FPS. So that's something that he had to work on a lot, was bringing these guys up to speed, and he did. Like, holy shit, he did at the Reykjavik finals. I was so impressed with the amount of fundamentally good plays that everybody was able to make. However, I think that he eventually, all that stuff caught up to him where he wasn't able to actually call at the highest level in champions. I think he was outdone by so many different IGLs in terms of his adaptation, his mid-round calling, and actually implementing some of the strats when faced with a match situation.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely, one thing from one point of credit from champions could certainly be their fracture and how he developed their play on that map. One of the better early fracture teams, coming up with a lot of little set plays for that map that we're seeing a lot of continued success in the champions tournament.
Also still had strong individual performances on LAN.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was a LANable at both lands.
Yeah.
He was playing really well, and individually at this land, Bone Cold was playing very well. I mean, the Bone Cold redemption arc did happen from Berlin to champions, because at the top of the year, Ascend, when they won that Masters tournament that you guys were creaming about, and for a while after the games with Ascend, Bone Cold was a straight up fragger on that team. When he was playing Omen a lot, before the existence of Astra, and when Astra wasn't totally dominating the meta, like he was popping off. He was a really strong fragger for the team, and he got really, I think, maybe in a general sense, underrated because of that Berlin performance, when that was clearly his worst performing tournament. And, we had talked at length about a lot of that being from, like, it looked like the dude just overheated trying to lead the team. He couldn't even think about what he was doing individually at some point. And now coming into champions with the role swap, with him playing more initiator, I mean, he was just back to popping off. He was playing really well individually, obviously led his team to the champions victory. What do you guys make of his whole year, though, and this nomination?
I think it's really interesting, the idea that he posted this tweet afterwards saying that I'm the best IGL. I mean, he is the IGL on the winning team. And I think there could be an argument that he was the best IGL at champions with how Ascend plays. They set up this like early advantage for themselves a lot by trying to take some piece of the map or whatever. And then they'll try and adapt and make adaptations based off that. So a lot of what they do is a bit of setup and then working from that setup. What does your opponent do to react to your setup? And then it's mid-rounding from there to try and find an advantage based on exploiting your opponent. And that does take good IGLing. Like, that isn't just implementing strats, that's calling on the fly and calling the right reaction to what your opponent's trying to run. The problem to me for IGL of the year is that it can't just be one tournament. And he wasn't just mediocre at Berlin. He was it sounds really harsh to say he was detrimental to the team, but he was. It was one of the major failings of their match, particularly against Vision Strikers, is when I noticed it the most. But I think it extended throughout quite a lot of the tournament, was that they just ended up doing the same things repeatedly and couldn't come up with the right answers during rounds to try and counter their opponents. And that's the kind of stuff that you would expect from an IGL. Now, he was pretty young. He wasn't IGL in the team at the beginning. That was called a mentor. And then when he took over, he didn't do incredibly. So the question becomes, if you're the best IGL at champions, does that make you the best throughout the year when you clearly weren't for any of the rest of the year? To me, it doesn't. But again, that comes down to how much you rate champions.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Next on the list from NA, we have FNS, leader of Team Envy. I mean, Envy, one of the most consistent teams in the scene for sure. Champions was the first time they haven't made a top 4 in probably all year, I would imagine. They have just been mega consistent in NA, always hanging around essentially the number 2 spot if you were to make a power ranking at any time. And I think a lot of that is due to the FNS leadership on the team. He's been with them since the beginning. I'm sure was a part of making some of the good roster moves that they made throughout this year, bringing in Marv, bringing in Ye. I think individually towards the end of the year, he's had some pretty solid tournaments as well. But will the lack of tournament wins, etc., compared to the other IGLs on this list, does that just kind of hold him back?
I mean, also, they kind of fell apart in a lot of very clutch situations, right? Which is something, obviously, it's not something you can suddenly say, like, oh, FNS is the reason they fell apart, right? That's kind of, like, dumb. Like, it's obviously not on him. But when you consider that it happened, several times, it seemed, I feel like, and you look at the teams where they had so much adaptation when things were going wrong for them, when you consider, like, Redgar, for example, for Gambit, when they were hitting brick walls, they shifted and they changed a lot. And also, he still maintained strong individual performances. Well, actually, I think FNS ended the year actually at a much better individual level than he started the year at times. I don't know. I just don't think he's like currently. Can we really put him in the same category as some of the other players, like Redgar, Shazam, etc. Right? And like he definitely has had very strong moments, but I don't know if he's really in the same tier yet until he's able to like find a real groove with Envy, I think, which they've never been able to keep.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think definitely has done enough to earn a nomination on the list, but not quite enough for the win compared to some of the others at the moment. And last on the list, Steel from 100 Thieves. Certainly one of the best IGLs from NA, but unfortunately his 2021 story kind of got cut short because he got cut. So, I mean, that is probably enough probably enough to maybe get a bit of a nomination, but I don't think he's going to be winning this award.
Well, consider this. Steel was on 100 Thieves when he made you feel American again, okay?
Yeah,
as a Canadian IGL. Just imagine.
As a Canadian IGL, I have never had more United States pride than when they beat Ascend. But I don't think that'll be enough. Okay, the final award, the roster move of the year. These are pretty interesting. This is a kind of a banger award, I'm not going to lie. Number 1, Yay to Envy. I mean, that is a damn good one. Josh?
Yeah, I'll give you the Yay to Envy argument. I think that this was obviously an excellent move because it was a massive upgrade. They picked up an incredible player, one of our nominees for Player of the Year, because he's that damn good. And also what I like about this move is how opportunistic it was. This wasn't an obvious open and shut case. It might feel like it in hindsight, but at the time, you just qualified to be able to get to Berlin, and you are cutting a player, or rather, sorry, they had qualified to Challengers Finals, right? And they were fighting to qualify for Berlin. Was that the timing of it? Something like that. I think they just made it to Challengers Finals, and they had to be able to win at Challengers Finals with a replacement player, and they had just cut their a good player to go for a really opportunistic upgrade. So this is like an unusual pickup, which I think elevates it a little bit because it's not just your bog standard. Anyone could have made this move. And it paid off massively for them. I don't think there's any world where they get to the finals of Berlin without Yay.
Yeah, pretty damn true.
It's interesting. I feel like without the Marved move, though, this move doesn't work. Is that weird?
Honestly, that's not a crazy take considering Marv, especially Champions, I felt was up there in terms of their most consistent player.
I'm not saying that Yay isn't a
Yay's not a good move. No.
Yeah, I'm just saying that without that, they would have been lacking such a crucial part, which was a dedicated smokes player to the team. I mean, Mame would have been playing it, but Marv was just that much better, and that's a piece that you have needed to implement a little bit longer. Because if they did that, for example, right at Challenge Playoff, I think that's way too little time to be able to implement your smokes player. So without that, it doesn't work. Maybe.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some truth to that. I mean, kind of both those moves in tandem were huge, and they came one after another. I can see what you're saying, though. I mean, obviously on this list, you're going to have TenZ to Sentinels, right? The $1 million transaction of TenZ to Sentinels has to be on here. I mean, it also just sent Sentinels into the stratosphere for that like, I don't know if you want to call it a honeymoon era, whatever it was, where things were just clicking, and they just absolutely crushed for the first few months that he was on the team. And I suppose, again, it's just kind of a question of like, well, actually, I mean, I suppose there's more with talking about TenZ in this one than just how did he perform at the end of the year, but with such an immense price tag and everything around it as well. Was it worth it? Clout aside, was it worth it for...
I think that's important.
Yeah, clout aside, was this the roster move of the year to help Sentinels win titles and play well throughout the year? I mean, it certainly worked for the first half of the year, and it worked up until Berlin, where even at Berlin, TenZ when he was on Jett was still crazy. If I remember correctly, like his KPR was still like 1.24 on Jett. He was still pounding at Berlin when he was playing Jett. So what do you guys think?
I think that, well, first of all, there's questions about when he even got signed, because the story from the players and the story from Jack was different, right? Jack said that the deal was already done before Reykjavik, but they were just waiting to tell the players at Reykjavik, something like that. The players like, oh, we didn't know, and reports were coming out that it was done after Reykjavik or something. The point being that they had already made the loan before that. But if you want to include Reykjavik, they signed the player and they instantly got a championship or like a Masters win off the back of it. So you've got success immediately. But I don't think he was a natural fit for the team. They had to shuffle other people to try and like fit him in, and Shaz had to move away from his standard role and learn a different role. It's not like the Envy move where Ye had a space carved out for him and they were actually missing that star Jett AWPer. They already had Shaz playing a really good role, and they actually were missing a different role and had to kind of move pieces about. So I think in that sense, it also became a little awkward for them, and you saw the ramifications of that later on down the year.
Sure. It's also pretty hard to disentangle this move from the clout
Business. Yeah.
You know, it's very hard to disentangle this move from that. But at the time, I think, and when you think about the success that Sentinels overall had throughout the year, it was still a good move for them, right? Like, you could argue that maybe there are pieces you could have put in place that would potentially have put Sentinels in a better position end of year. But when you think about the Iceland performance and also just the overall domestic dominance and still pretty good results at international events, though not amazing comparatively. And also the landscape of North America at the time that TenZ and this transaction happened, I still feel like it makes the list. You know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
It is hard to untangle business ramifications, but like when you think about just gameplay, you still think about the fact that they brought TenZ out of retirement. Without this move, TenZ would still be fucking making content for Cloud9.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Wouldn't even be on the player of the year list. That's fucking crazy.
Another really good one next here, Nivera to Liquid. I mean, Liquid were just on the edge of being amazing, and Nivera was just a little kick over the edge, and they just reached a whole new level. Also, just impressive how good he was off the jump in his first tournament. Just so well integrated into the team. They immediately were using, like, it's actually crazy how much they got out of Nivera coming into the game playing his first tournaments. They were using him on multiple roles. He filled the Sova role for them on maps where they needed it. He was playing Killjoy well for them. They were using him in a unique way with having him being a part of the double op setup. They're the only team that really used that at all. His rifling was really solid from the get-go. He played a number of agents for them. I mean, what a pickup, honestly. I mean, just a great move from Liquid.
It's an absolutely elite level pickup. I think if it had been done earlier on in the year, had the awards season started, I don't know how you would even construct this fake world that I'm imagining here. But
no, it's easy. It's just the Esports Awards.
Yes.
If you'd had this situation with Liquid happen earlier on, so we got to see more time with them, then I think this could be a candidate for like hands down winner. I think this really is the caliber of move that will pay off dividends down the road, and you'll look back a year from now and be like, holy crap, this was an amazing move. But it was just too late towards the end of the year for me. I mean, like they only got to play in 2 tournaments. I don't, you can't have it as roster move of the year in my opinion, even though it's a god tier move. I really am high on Nivera joining this team. I think he's been a fantastic talent. I think he's been one of the best talents that's come fresh from CS to Valorant. He's just immediately slotted in.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
I mean, another player who just came from CS this year was Ethan for 100 Thieves. I think also is going to be a nominee here. I mean, Ethan had a really consistent year for the most part for 100 Thieves. If I remember correctly, I don't think he was amazing off the jump, but you could clearly see he was really good and would eventually reach, I think, some of the heights that he did. And with pretty quick pace, he got to a really high level for the team. Played some initiator roles really well for them with the Sky. His Sage for a while in NA, which was kind of when I was talking about that Ascend-inspired era of 100 Thieves. I think a lot of that was when he started playing a lot of Sage, like a reminiscent of like a Lowell for Heretics at the beginning of the year. He was really good. His Sage was pretty dominant at that time. And playing the Smokes role as well when he was on Omen. Played a number of good roles for 100 Thieves, consistent throughout the year, and was a part of the duo that brought them success, because when they were getting wins, it was Ethan and Asuna just tearing up the server, like that duo.
Yeah, I mean, also he at times looked like the most consistent player, like one of the most consistently impactful players in North America. And he just looked really, really good on just about every role he had played for them. Obviously, they had a bit of a role shuffle, because their Nitro was amazing at Smokes, and they had Ethan play Smokes for a little bit, and then they had the Sage, and like he played a couple different things for them. And they were figuring out the roles, but I think the role, when you think of the overall impact it had on 100 Thieves, it's up there in terms of just putting a player they needed. They absolutely needed Ethan, I think, on 100 Thieves to kind of make that roster work.
Yeah. I mean, after Champions, this one is definitely in the conversation as well, which is Kesnet to Crew. I mean, I don't know. You want to tackle that, Josh?
Well, I don't know too much about like what the initial stuff that Kesnet was doing before he joined Crew, because the team only came onto my radar as a serious contender for going deep in international tournaments afterwards. But I believe he was a streamer for Crew, the organization, before he joined the team.
Really?
And I'm sure there'll be some like LATAM fans that'll correct me there, but that's what Liquipedia lists him as. And I don't know like what competitive experience he'd had, that kind of thing. I'm really ignorant on that fact, but it ranges anywhere from unbelievable gigabrain pickup to just massive addition of firepower, which is exactly what the team needed. I mean, like, worst case scenario, it's an amazing pickup because it just adds a star player to your team that otherwise has a relatively inconsistent Jett player as your best firepower element. And it just wouldn't be in the position that they're in without Kesnet. So I think it was a fantastic move, bordering on Megamind if more details were unveiled to me potentially about how he was discovered or whatever.
Yeah. Vanity to Cloud9. I mean, we were talking about the impact of Vanity's IGLing and how that has just directly correlated with the teams he's left and then joined.
I think this one is really, really cool just because you could, for all these other teams, they had success before. Like NV was a top 4 team in the region. They could probably have made it to Berlin in the other case. Liquid, same thing. Sentinels, obviously. But for Vanity, Cloud9 was not doing well whatsoever. They were struggling with roster stuff. They were struggling with IGLing. They're struggling with everything. And then Vanity comes on after they finally get rid of Floppy, and they just start playing well, and they make it the best placing team in NA at Champions.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is Durga and Magnum to Fnatic is a big move. I mean, that is a really
Give it to him fast.
Big
Let him
move,
fast.
Josh.
Let me go.
No. Josh,
I
that's
feel
a
like
big move.
Oh, is he already prepared?
I mean,
I'm gearing
Durka
up for
has to be at least a top 21 player this year. And
I think he's exactly top 21 of the year. Yeah, if I had to rate him. And yeah, I think he's probably the best Jett in his group, and etc. etc. No, I think I actually wanted this one on the list, and it's a bit cheating because it's 2 moves in one. But unlike, I mean, if you're thinking about Liquid added like Yampi, and then a couple of months later they add Navera. The Fnatic move is at the same time. They realize that they need a big shift in terms of how the team works. 2 players leave, and they're trialing 2 players at the same time, trying to get this element that they're lacking, that they're missing. And the improvement for Fnatic was dramatic. They went from a team that had cool ideas, but was not really getting that deep. Like they had that one tournament of First Strike where it was like, oh damn, these guys are actually really good. But they needed that kick to get into the to get into the top tier, and Durka and Magnum were it. They've looked, I mean, Magnum online has looked incredible even throughout their dark periods where Fnatic weren't doing so well, and Durka at LAN has just been insanely good. So the two have still been putting up very good performances even now, giving credit to the idea that they were excellent pickups back then. And if I think about where Fnatic would have been had they stuck with that former roster, I'm not convinced we would have them on our radar whatsoever. I mean, I certainly don't think they would have got second to Reykjavik. They certainly wouldn't have made champions off the back of that. They would just be a team that occasionally has cool ideas, and that you would mock me for looking at their VODs like 10-star or some shit. You'd be like, oh, you're fucking bringing up the Fnatic VODs again. You like that Boaster guy because he does some silly dances, do you? And that's it. That's how you would describe Fnatic to me.
Yeah, they were just the injection of crazy firepower that team needed. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. And yeah, goddamn, Magnum is so good too. I'm just thinking back to some of the Magnum plays at Reykjavik. He was just so
like the
good.
flash at 12-10.
Not that. I was thinking about Icebox. There's something with him on Icebox, and there was a Viper's Pit, and he was running around killing people, and it was cool. It was a good pickup, is what I'm getting at. Last on the list. This is a good... Hold on. This is actually a good low-key sleeper pick. The Zeke to Ascend. That is a good one. That is a good one, because I remember when this happened as well, there were a lot of questions like, whoa, what's going to happen? Who's going to lead the team? What's going to happen? IGLs, Coldamenta's gone. And then Zeke joins after being pretty on G2. Now, whether that was, how much of that is on him and how much
G2.
of that was on G2 misusing him, I think is probably a lot in the latter, especially looking at this with hindsight, because he's just found so much more success on Ascend in this flex role than he was playing what he was playing on G2 and in that system at the beginning of the year. But this is actually kind of a sleeper. That's a pretty good one.
The reason I wanted this one on my list as well, and the reason it features pretty highly on how I would rank them across the year, is that it really wasn't a natural pick again. If you just as a pundit were trying to pick somebody to replace Coldamenta for Ascend, you wouldn't pick a guy who didn't want to IGL. The addition of Zeke would be fine if he wanted to go back to IGLing like he was on Nolpenki, but he'd already asserted on G2 that he didn't want the firm IGL position, and so that had to go to someone else within the team, and no one else had experience. And we'd had interviews with Bone Cold where he was talking about how much Coldamenta's prep and IGLing meant to their success, and so it seemed like this is a really risky pickup. Unless someone else fills those shoes and they feel confident someone else can, this is not going to go well. And then the style that they play and how they've implemented the looser strategy stuff. So they don't have extremely strict micromanagement. They give a lot of freedom to their players to make individual stuff, and then they react off the back of that. And then how well Boncold's eventually grown into the role has all made this move in hindsight look genius when it really wasn't obvious at the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would have never have. Honestly, I don't think I would have even have thought of this move. And then reading it on the list, yeah, with the power of hindsight, I mean, they've just used him to such an excellent effect, and he's been so consistent. He's played a number of good roles in the flex position. He's been good at both the lands that they attended. I mean, he was unreal at Champions, and he was really good at Berlin too. Yeah, what an actual giga-brain move from Ascend that you can kind of only establish as a giga-brain with hindsight, which is doesn't mean it's. I mean, it's just.
I think one of the problems for me with it though is that it just kind of felt. I mean, maybe this is how, like, we shouldn't have thought about it in the moment, but it felt just kind of happenstance because G2 took Cold Dementa and then Zeke's free, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
like we'll take Zeke, whatever. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, you actually think now the fact that they established this Polish duo on Ascend is massive. I think that these Zeke and Starkso became the emotional leaders for that team, and that's something that they 100% needed, and a big reason for why what you said about MBS as well, why they were able to be so confident and poised coming into Champions.
Yeah. Well, that is the last one. So there are all of your nominees for the 2021 Plat Chat Awards for the Player of the Year, Team of the Year, Coach, Match, IGL, and Roster Move of the Year. And then next week, we are going to announce our winners. So make sure to tune in for that. Kurt, how is that? How have we decided on how the system is going to work for this? Do we want to just all anonymously give our winner for each, and then to you, and then we can have a piece of paper and reveal it?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. I like that.
I think that would be fun.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. And do we want to do the community vote thing just for fun? Nominations.
Well,
Josh
I think
didn't want to do that.
Yeah,
you want to do
be
both for fun, or
also Upcomer are doing a community vote for a lot of the same kind of things. Yeah, so I think it would just be fun to compare them perhaps to the community votes over there rather than run our own separate thing as well.
Our viewers are smarter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, actually, it's that I don't want to know that our viewers are dumb.
Yeah, our viewers are really smart. We have
it is better to close one's mouth.
We have one topic left, and it's my weekly award. Kurt, roll the videotape. Sage down. Headshot. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. That's why it's weekly. Oh, shit. I got the weekly award, but it faces this way. Dude, Sage down. This week, the weekly award, I'm giving it to Vivo Keyed, because they've only gone and done it. They dropped the bag. They dropped the bag on MW0 today. Did you guys see the report?
Okay.
No, I didn't actually. I didn't see this.
They've only gone and done it. They've spent 500. I'm confused by how currency works. I'm not the CEO of money, like how Connor is the CEO of money.
Yeah,
but they, I don't know. They've spent an immense amount of money to.
It's like $82,000. It's like $82,000.
See, I saw that. Then I saw people saying it was more. I saw people. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how addition works or subtraction.
Can't you just put it to a converter, like a currency converter?
You see, that's what people were doing. But then people were like, no, that's wrong. I don't know what's going on. Okay. All I know is they spent money, and a lot of it, to lock up MW0 for 2022. They got him. They got Heat. They've got MW. They've got Maria's. It's fucking happening.
This is the Wyatt's Weekly Award I'm the most upset about ever.
Stay mad. Once again, haters are everywhere. They're everywhere.
They're here. They're on this podcast.
But the Vivo Keyed fans are about to feast in 2022.
Yeah, so that's it. It's just Vivo Keyed for dropping the bag.
Keeping the player. Just keeping MW0.
Well, they didn't have him before. They didn't, so they're not keeping him. They're you know. They're kind of keeping him.
Like Pence, he's staying.
Yeah, it's not even.
Yeah,
really
it's like it's like
a major acquisition.
He played with them, so it's like he
was playing with them on loan. You know? They were borrowing him.
Yeah, that?
And
What do
now-
you mean? But haters everywhere. Why? What is this shit?
Yep. Hey,
bull.
once again, I mean, this is just proof. Haters everywhere.
I think you're going to be a flip-flopper and end up supporting one of the other Brazilian teams once they form a super team anyway. I think this love for Vivo Kid is short-lived.
No, I mean, I love both. I love Vivo Kid and I love Loud. And I love MIBR with GTN's new roster.
Well, you're gonna love NIP too. You're gonna love it.
I might not love NIP. I don't know what they're doing.
You're gonna love it.
I don't know what NIP are up to, I'll be honest. But
You're
maybe
gonna
I'll love
love that
NIP too. We shall see. But yeah, was there any was there breaking news during the episode? Did one of those things happen, or did we cover it all?
Yeah, there was a very important tweet from Dapper. Don't actually look at the tweet. It's not worth looking at the tweet.
Oh, Jesus
don't
Christ.
bother.
We're not going to open that. So no breaking news. Is this
Not
it?
as far as I'm aware.
Is this the end of the show, guys? This is really
End
sad.
of year. Happy New Year, by the way, guys.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, huh? Guys, if you're having Happy New Year, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube.
What the fuck is going on?
The pop-up has come up. And also, leave a comment, huh?
About what?
New Year's resolution.
Ah, there we go. What's
I
the
like
New
that,
Year's
Kurt.
resolution?
What's your New Year's resolution? Are you going to go
Yeah.
to the gym? Are you going to play more Valorant? What are you going to do? Josh, what's your New Year's resolution?
I never make them because my will is weak, and
Honestly, that's
I
mad
can't stick
respect.
to them.
What if you made a resolution to improve your will?
Do you know what my? Wow, that's so meta. I wouldn't even know where to begin with it.
I mean, there's some very obvious solutions. So you get Beth to just like perform various various things that push your mental strength to the limit without your knowledge, and then you have to resist it, and eventually you come out and you're able to make resolutions.
But all of those would require me to want to do it.
No,
You're saying
not if it
I have
happened
to
against your
force
will.
my girlfriend to torture me for a year.
No, you would have to
in
force
order
her. She would see this.
I don't think she'd want to. What are you
Part of
trying to
herself
imply? That she'd be willing to Guantanamo Bay me?
because she
just behind
understands at
my
the end of
back.
it, you're going to be a better person.
Do you know what my resolution was last year? I'll tell you how shit I am at them. Last year I was like, oh, it's New Year's. The guys next door, we're going to be moving in there. They've got a gym. I'll go and use that. I'm not going to set strict limits on myself. Let's say I'll use it once a week.
I mean,
How many times have I been over there, Wyatt?
I can tell you that it's absolutely 0 times. I mean, the closest you've gotten to working out, the closest. I mean, actually, I'm not sure what the closest you've gotten to working out this year has been destroying watermelons and pumpkins with the sledgehammer and playing Top Golf and
You're
billiards.
basketball.
Oh, yeah, we did play a lot of basketball.
Well,
You're
the
right.
basketball, yeah, that's a very
Right.
active one.
The most out of breath I got all year was trying to defend Esports Doug in basketball. So, the guy's lively.
Yeah, he is a lively man.
I can't wait to hear a commentator for NBA say that. It's like, oh, he's looking real lively on the court tonight.
All right, let's wrap this one up. Oh, guys. Oh, we don't get to see each other for a week. Oh,
a whole year? What are you talking about?
No, not until next year, guys.
Wait, that's so crazy. Next time we talk, it's gonna be next year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What the fuck? All right, Kurt, end the episode.